You're listening to The Pete Sheppard Show.
Oh, it's good to be back.
As you put the game plan together, is it with the intention of Jalen as the starting quarterback this weekend?
Yeah, I have no new information for you guys. Like I said yesterday, I progressed into the protocol.
Are you able to say if he's in the building today?
I got no new info for you guys here today. I'm sorry.
Has Jalen left the building? Yo, no! Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a Hump Day edition of the Pete Sheppard Show here on the Coastal Sports Network. How are you today? It's chilly out there around the country, even here in Southwest Florida. 42 degrees. Chillier up where Angel is up in Tampa. More on that in a minute. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out across the video platform on this Hump Day Wednesday. Big show lined up. Let's get it going. Yes, you can follow the show right here. Follow me on X, on Twitter, at pshep326. On Facebook, multiple platforms on Facebook, on my Facebook page, on Tampa Joe Facebook's page, and now on the Coastal Network Facebook page as well. Also, check out the app at sr1029thegame.com. CSN Florida, Rumble, Spotify, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, and as always, call or text the show 727-858-6650. Let me tell you how this works. Let me tell you how this business should work. And this is why the people in Bristol sometimes I just don't get it. We get a lot to talk about today. Lots of NFL news coming up, reaction to all the massive firings that have gone on, and of course, people are bringing race into it like they do every single year. We'll have a lot about that. Some great games yesterday. Some not so great in college basketball, which we'll get to. There's a whole lot of good stuff going on, a whole lot of information going on, a bunch of stories going on in the world of sports. And I have a big show lined up for you today. What I don't understand over there in Bristol, I swear to Christ, I don't get it, is that everything that is going on, and what did they lead with at 6 o'clock this morning? The fucking Lakers, who get blown out in Dallas, a team playing back-to-back nights, and without Luka Doncic and without Kyrie Irving, and somehow the great minds over in Bristol think that should be the lead story. Out of your minds. The Lakers do not move the needle. I'm sorry. A team that is struggling, going to struggle just to get into play-in tournament, and that's what you lead with? You want to lead with Trae Young, buzzer beater at half court to win the game? That's fine. I got no problem with that. I want to lead with the Celtics winning in Denver, going on a 15-0 run late in the fourth quarter, which is why I'm a little grumpy today because I'm going on about 3.5 hours sleep. But I just don't know. And the lead story yesterday, the lead story this morning, by far, not the third or fourth one that they had, by far is what happened with the Florida Gators last night, absolutely destroying the Tennessee Volunteers in Gainesville by 30. No, not 3, out of 0, by 30. Knocking Rick Barnes' boys out of the undefeated ranks last night. That's the lead story. The Lakers should have been like 10th. Who cares about the Lakers? I know but I'm trying to make a point here. Anyway, we got a lot going on. Chris Price with the Boston Globe is going to join me at 8:30 this morning. We'll get his reaction about, more and more about how Gerard Mayo was canned because he lost the locker room. I don't think there's any question. We've been talking about that for a few weeks, at least I have on this show, so that doesn't surprise me. Mia O'Brien, 1010XL, and a host of Helmets and Heels, going to join us as well at 9:05 this morning. We'll get her reaction about what happened with Doug Peterson, Shad Khan, Trent Baalke still staying on board. We'll get all of that information. Plus, she also covers college basketball as well. And we'll get to her thoughts on the Gators' big win last night over Tennessee. And then Bill Sparrows from the Boston Herald and Bookies.com, senior betting analyst, will join me at 9:30. I'm going to let him sleep in. Usually he's an 8:30 guest, but today's going to be a 9:30 guest. So we have a lot going on. A lot of FAU connections from last night, not only in the Gators, but also out west, where Michigan beat UCLA last night. First time, I think it's the second time they've ever won at Pauley Pavilion. And their coach wasn't happy. Cronin was not happy after that, which we will get to. Get the video, and man, I'd like to see more of that. He called out his players and basically called them gutless, but we'll get into that as well. But lots to talk about. NFL, Mike McCarthy, the Jerry Jones is denying Mike McCarthy to speak to the Chicago Bears, which is fine. He's got until a week to negotiate with him, but I think Jerry's playing games again. If I'm Mike McCarthy, I say, here's my number. Here's what I want. Otherwise, go to hell. And I'll just sit it out for a week, and then I'll go where I want. That's what I would do. Jerry Jones, either was going to issue an ultimatum, like if you go to Chicago, don't plan on coming back, that type of thing. If you go interview anywhere else, don't plan on coming back. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting scenario. We'll get to that as well. Got some stuff from Ryan Poles, the GM of the Chicago Bears as well. Fascinating stuff going on. Antonio Pierce got fired with the Raiders. No surprise there. The fired GM gets fired with Tennessee. I mean, there's just a lot of firings going on, and always this time of year when it happens, people bring race into the issue, which I can't stand. If you look what Antonio Pierce has done out there, okay, and what Gerard Mayo did, fair or unfair, because of the team that was put around him. But when you start talking about people that cover the team, about losing the locker room so early, it happens. It happened very quickly. He just wasn't ready. He just wasn't ready. But we'll get into that. Give you some reaction as well. There's lots going on. Pete Carroll now is going to interview with the Bears as well. So we have a ton to talk about this morning. And with that, we say good morning to Angel Martinez. Good morning, Angel. How are you?
Good morning, Senor Pitor. I think Mike McDaniels is the one that I'm blaming for this cold weather because he goes up there with the GM yesterday. It's like, wow, again, nothing super interesting. But if anything, maybe he'll heat something up today. Nonetheless, 36 degrees here in the Tampa Bay region, and it's going to get even chillier tonight as we only expect it to be 55 for the high. So yeah, it's except for up north, I think they're waking up to 11 degrees. Feels like minus 10.
Well, yeah, it certainly does. And before we get on with the show, too, I want to send thoughts and prayers out to what is going on Pacific Palisades area out in California. 200, as of about a few minutes ago, 290 acres have burned thus far. It is just a frightening sight. It looks like something out of a video game / movie. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable. And the incredible part is authorities are just saying, you just got to leave. There's no plan. People have abandoned their cars. You've seen the plows, basically trucks and plow type vehicles coming down the respective highways and side streets just to make room for emergency vehicles. It is so surreal to watch it. It's just absolutely devastating. People trapped in their homes with their families and their pets. It's just crazy. So thoughts and prayers go out to anybody who's out in that area, the Pacific Palisades, about 290 acres burning. And it was, yesterday around 4 o'clock here in Fort Myers, or a big part of Fort Myers, they had controlled burns. And I living down there 8 years, and a lot of places around the country have controlled burns, but you can tell when it's down here. And it was pretty heavy, smoky area for about an hour and a half yesterday. But the reason why they do it is so the situation that's happened out in California doesn't happen here. They have these controlled burns because it's so dry. And down here, we have, Angel, we haven't had, and I'm sure you guys haven't, we haven't had hardly any rain in the really going on a couple of months. It really is. It looked like it was going to rain a couple of days ago, but when you go a couple of months in an area where you have no rain, it gets extremely dry, and all it takes, is one burnt cigarette or somebody being careless, and poof, it can go up in a matter. I've seen it. When I lived in Bonita my first year down here, I saw it over there. It was due to a burnt cigarette or something, and I mean it took a couple of days to put that thing out. So it gets crazy. But it's hard to watch what's going on in the Pacific Palisades. I'll be honest with you. When you just it looks like something out of a video game or a movie. It's unbelievable. Anyway, good morning to you, and we had a lot to talk about today, but I'm sure you feel the same way I do. It's just you look at it and I'm like, wow.
No, it is
really
devastating.
happening.
It sucks. I don't understand it, but it's devastating. Especially, I mean, listen, there's even if you have millions upon millions of dollars, it stinks when you lose. Hopefully, no one ever passes away. That's the big thing, because one life lost is too many. But you lose your house. It sucks because now you have to relocate. You have to do whatever, especially if you have, that's the only thing you have in your possession is that. But it's a shame what happens out there. I mean, it doesn't make any freaking sense, but hopefully things will end up getting better. And I guess on a spin-off from that, because you have bad news and good news. The good news here, as far as on the network, had the best year ever last year. If you guys missed out the tweet, tons and tons and tons of visitors to the website. We do appreciate it, especially those who are viewing the shows all over the network. As Pete had mentioned, today we're on the Coastal Sports Network Facebook page live for the first time. So lots still happening here on the network, still a lot going on. And obviously with City Garage Motorsports, with ARD, Auto Racing Digest, there's tons and tons of content coming up here that I'm going to need 50 of me coming up in February with everything that's about to happen.
Well, that's great news. It really is. And great job by everybody on the network. And Angel, this was your thing. You built a web page. You put this. You sound like Scarface. Who put this thing together? Me. That's who. Who do I trust? Me. This is when he's sitting in the hot tub. Come on, Pelican. But Angel, you've done an unbelievable job. We're excited to be able to work with the great network. Auto Racing Digest says. Is that who is that? Who sends those texts?
Who do you always say gets your foot off the boat?
Oh yeah, Spalding.
Yeah,
Spalding, get your foot off the boat. So all right, so let me just sum up what happened in college hoops last night real quick, because this should have been the lead story on SportsCenter. I'm sorry. When the number one team in the country, undefeated, goes down by 30 to your SEC rival, I think that's a bigger story than the goddamn Lakers, just sucking. As Charles Barkley said, they stink, last night on TNT. I mean, it's just like he hates talking about them. And they had the Laker game, the TNT, that was the first game they had last night with the Lakers at Dallas. Without Kyrie Irving, without Luka Doncic, and the Lakers just laid a big fat egg. But because LeBron played and scored some points, somehow that's supposed to be the lead story. The lead story was the Florida Gators last night. There's no doubt about it. That besides, first of all, the NFL is always king. So all the firings, those are the lead stories. So let me be perfectly clear. But we have a lot of time. We have 3 hours on the show to get to all of that. But other than which that's what they should have led with. And then after that, then you come in with what's going on with the Gators and just pounding. Elijah Martin, remember him, FAU people? He was unbelievable last night. 18 points for them. Denzel Aberdeen had 16. And Alex Condon had 12 points and 12 rebounds. I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, from the get-go, Florida jumped out to like a 6-0 lead or 9-2, whatever it was, 9-0. Tennessee didn't score for like the first 7 minutes of the game. It was amazing. I watched the whole game, on my phone while I was watching other stuff as well. They were thumped. I mean, there's a thumping and there's a butt whipping and an ass kicking, and that was an ass whipping last night by the number 8 Florida Gators at home in Gainesville. And Rick Barnes, wow. I mean, 30 points you lose by to a rival. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, out at Pauley Pavilion, and I'm going to play this cut right away, Angel. We're going to go down to, it's a little ways down on my Twitter page, to Mike Cronin, the head coach of UCLA. Now, remember, another FAU connection. Remember, Dustin May is out coaching Michigan, and they're ranked 24th right now, and they are on the rise. UCLA is going to fall out of the top 25 probably this week. They were 22. But another FAU connection with Vladislav what's his last name? Golden? No, not Gold. That's the coach's name. But Vladislav, the kid that's 7'1" from Russia, who was with FAU last year and followed Dusty May all the way to Michigan. He was absolutely unbelievable last night. 36 points, 21 of them in the first half, dunking all over Tyler Bluto, by the way, like a couple of times early on, just dunking on his face. Afterwards, and you don't see this often, you don't hear this a lot. I mean, John Calipari's done it in the past, Rick Pitino in the past, Bill Self occasionally, but Mike Cronin went off on his players after they lost last night to Michigan.
But we don't play. We're soft. So don't tell me you want to win. Like, just don't tell me you want to win. So don't tell me you want to win. It's crazy, you know. And it's every day. I'm tired of it. It's every day. I have the most energy of anybody at practice every day. I'm upset with everybody in that locker room, my assistant coaches and my players. I mean, I don't need to do anything else. I almost got 500 wins. I'm only 53. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. But yet I come in and I have more passion and energy and pride than everybody in. That's the problem. So what the truth of it is, Ben, it's really hard to coach people that are delusional. The hungry dog gets the bone. We got guys that think they're way better than they are. They're nice kids. They're completely delusional about who they are. But we don't play. We're soft.
We don't play well. We're soft. I mean, you don't. It's refreshing in a lot of ways, and you know, he threw his assistant coaches under the bus as well. But yeah, but Vladislav Golden last night, 21 of his career high 36. I'm sure all the people that listen that are FAU fans and everything are probably rooting for Michigan, probably rooting for Florida a little bit on the side because a couple of ex-players with the Owls who went to the Final Four not too long ago, you know, are doing very well with their respective teams and Dusty May. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are rooting for Michigan that are from the Florida area because of that. But what unbelievable take by Mr. Cronin there, Mike Cronin, the coach of UCLA. Very, very upset. Very, very upset.
Well, at least, hey, if you're going to say it right, if you're going to say your players are soft, you're going to say this is soft, you get the message across. Because if I'm hearing that back, if I'm a player, if I'm a coach, I'm like, wow, really? I mean, it's not throwing you under the bus. You're already on the bus. He's just sending the bus off into the oblivion. So that's on him. That's a good take. So it's good to hear coaches actually say that.
What's practice going to be like today? Run till you puke? I mean, suicides, you know. I mean, what's practice? I would hate to be practicing, you know, if they're practicing at Poly Pavilion today, that would be absolutely, literally puke-inducing. I can only imagine the amount of running that is going to go on. All right, let's get back into the NFL here. A big show lined up for you today. A little bit, I might get into the TGL situation last night. I tuned it on for a couple of minutes, but I was watching too much other stuff. If we could scroll down, Angel, let's go yesterday to Get Up, and let's get into Jalen Hurts and the situation. And I'm sure Eagles fans are, you know, are pins and needles, all the other trepidation, anxiety, whatever you want to say. And Jalen Hurts still officially kind of in the concussion protocol. You heard the cut I played earlier with Nick Sirianni to start the show. Here are the boys discussing Jalen Hurts' situation yesterday on Get Up.
I want to ask you the questions directly as I can. Am I living in a world where the Eagles might play this playoff game this weekend against Green Bay without Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, because until you're cleared through the concussion protocol, you're not. To your point, you can't play through it, right? It's not like, oh, I would have played last weekend if it was a playoff game. No, he wouldn't have because he wasn't cleared. He was at their walkthrough on Saturday, which is a good sign that he's out there at practice, That's right. But he still has to get some practice work. And then once you start getting practice work, they assess you every day in terms of did you have a recurrence of symptoms? And if you did, you're back to the beginning of the protocol.
Yeah. This is a weird way for me to ask you this question. How big a deal should I be making of this right now in my mind as I'm considering this game?
A massive deal. I mean, this is the difference between you saying, "Hey, this is the best team in the NFC," and this team could be eliminated week 1 of the playoffs. It is a massive change.
I want to ask you the questions directly as I can.
We'll just have to wait and see. But didn't see this coming this week. I mean, sort of saw it coming a little bit. But a little concerning that, as they were talking about, Jeff Saturday said, good signing was at the walkthrough on Saturday, but you want to get him out on the field, today. You want to get him back in the practice field today. Angel, how concerned? You are the big Eagles guy on this network, or one of them. And how are you feeling about this whole situation? And you're like, don't worry about it. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yep, I'm not worried about a thing. I believe in Nick Sirianni. He is the leader amongst leaders, so I worry about absolutely nothing because Tanner McKee is going to light it up just like Nick Foles did when Nick Foles had to step up. So I'm not worried about it. I honestly am not worried about it. Read between the lines,
You're
folks.
lying your ass off. Here's again, in case you missed it at the top of the hour. This is yesterday. Oop, my bad. Too many buttons.
As you put the game plan together, is it with the intention of Jalen as the starting quarterback this weekend?
Yeah, I have no new information for you guys. Like I said yesterday, I was progressing through the protocol.
Are you able to say if he's in the building today?
I got no new info for you guys here today. I'm sorry.
Well, he said he's doing the right thing. I mean, he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, and that's why I have 100% confidence because he gave a short 5-second answer. And that's why I have all the confidence in the world that Nick Sirianni is setting up this team for success against Green Bay. Listen, people, if you have, I bet Pete $3 trillion a couple days ago for a college game, right? And he paid it. I'm beyond happy he did. Now put that $3 trillion and put it on the Eagles.
Put it on the Eagles to win.
Yeah, $3 trillion.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you've been pessimistic about the team all year long, and I think they've grown leaps and bounds. I think the coach has actually grown leaps and bounds as well. But all bets are off if Jalen Hurts cannot play against the Packers. But here's more from your favorite head coach, Nick Sirianni, and how the Packers have changed since they faced them in Week 1.
Yeah, still obviously early on in our stages of scouting them, but people, teams develop and teams, from game 1 to game, where we are now, 18. Everyone's a different team. Some teams have different players because of injuries. Schemes. You start to get used to what you're good at, what you're not good at. So everybody is in a different mode than they were, week 1. Now, obviously, there's things that are staples that are good for, have been good for them, that have been good for us, that remain the same. But there's a lot of changes and a lot of differences. I just see a really, at the end of the day, though, I see a really well coached, fundamentally sound football team. And with a lot of really good football players, a lot of really solid football players on that roster. It's a really good football team that we're playing here on Sunday.
Good football team. Yes, it is. Remember, back to Week 1 when the Packers squeaked out a win. Remember, Saquon Barkley, one of the first plays of the year, or that remembered him by, was because he dropped that ball that would have been a touchdown, and the Eagles would have won. But doesn't matter. They end up with the 2 seed, so they'll get a chance for revenge. And I still like their chances very much as long as Jalen Hurts is able to go. ARD guy says, did you guys see Rex Ryan got interviewed for the Jets coaching job? That was the problem all along. They didn't keep Rex. Well, no. No, yeah. I mean, Rex Ryan is, we've been talking about this. It's been rumored for a couple of weeks, so we talked about it a lot yesterday. He's just one of many people. The same names you're going to hear, between Vrabel and Rex Ryan, now Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, been denied permission. We'll get to that in a minute. And Pierce getting fired with the Raiders. I mean, none of this stuff surprises me. There's a couple of surprises with Mike McDaniel. We'll hear from him as well today as he talked about Tyreek Hill. They finally had a meeting of the minds. Ooh, imagine that. And so we have some sound for that and a lot more. If we could scroll down, Angel, to Steve Weish. It's underneath my preview for the show today on Twitter. And talking about the firings of Gerard Mayo, Rand Carthon, the GM of Tennessee, and Antonio Pierce over the last few days. And Stephen Weiss has his take on the situation.
By the way, Gaspam Guy says, Angel, I can hear the sarcasm in your voice when you said that you're not worried. I call BS LOL. Listen, I am being as honest as I possibly can, folks.
Yeah.
It's a really, I don't know all the dynamics of what's going on in that building. But when you see he was one and done, ownership got impatient after asking him to replace the greatest head coach of all time with a very lousy roster. I think the Mike Vrabel factor is significant in this. I don't know if Mike Vrabel, if he wasn't available, I don't know if they would have made this move. But it also, look, Gerard Mayo made a lot of mistakes with the media, a lot of things, the way maybe he coached his team, the way he handles coordinators, the way, the hiring of the coordinators. But we see other coaches get patience, right? Other coaches get patience with this. And this is, but I was just up there a couple weeks ago. The local media, he was done. They were cooking him. The fan base was cooking him. So I think when everything kind of turned against him, he's not ready. He came in a year too soon. You don't hear that about some other first-year coaches, even though they struggle. He's a former player. It's just, again, I don't know all the dynamics of why it turned so hard against him when he has a very good quarterback. It's just interesting to see, and I have to say this because, we're hearing about Antonio Pierce possibly being a one and done in Las Vegas as well. And when you talk about minority head coaches, this is a frustration because a lot of times they come into bad situations. That's usually when head coaching turnover takes place. And a lot of times black head coaches feel they don't get really a ripe opportunity to grow and develop like their white counterparts. And I'm not saying that Gerard Mayo didn't deserve to be kept, on lack of merit, whatever. But this is just a frustration that is expressed to me oftentimes by coaches of color. When you look at like some of the last 5 head coaches let go, one and done. David Culley in Houston, Lovie Smith in Houston. Now they were replaced by a black head coach, D'Amico Ryans. But Gerard Mayo, Nate Hackett, Frank Reich, all these guys didn't do well enough to succeed necessarily. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this has been a decades-long frustration when it comes to minority coaches in terms of not being necessarily given the patience when walking into dire situations to get their first head coaching opportunities.
All right, I understand what he's saying. Totally respect the comments that he made, and I think some of that has applied in the past. Look, I haven't watched every single Raider play this year, but I've watched enough of them. That team stinks, and Gerard Mayo. The problem with Gerard Mayo, and other people keep commenting on it, and like the Stephen A's of the world and others, and I guarantee you they have not watched every single game and every single play like I have with that team this year. And I am telling you, they took gigantic step backwards. And you're going to get confirmation, I guarantee you, when Christopher Price comes on with me today from the Globe, who's there every day with the Patriots, you're going to hear the same thing that Mike Giardi has been saying and others have been saying as well. The guy simply lost the locker room. He wasn't ready. He was pushed into this job, as Robert Kraft admitted yesterday, way too early. He was not ready. And this has been going on for almost over 3 years, that they had decided that this was going to be the guy. Why? I have no clue of why they were pushing for this guy. I think Robert Kraft got a little sentimental for some reasons. It has nothing to do with the gym rat that Gerard Mayo was as a player. Fantastic captain, great linebacker, a little bit the injury bug. Otherwise, he was phenomenal with the Patriots. #1 pick out of Tennessee, fantastic. All the good things you say. But as a coach on the field, if you have not watched that team like I have every single week, and you're in the media and the national media, then you don't know what you're talking about. Because I don't care, black, white, green, yellow, purple, it doesn't matter. That guy simply lost the team. There is no question about it. They took gigantic step backwards. And the Raiders stink. I mean, and the Patriots stunk too this year. You just go back to how, if there was any type of, progression towards the end of the season, the last 3 or 4 games, and he got fired, then you could make a case for it. But they stunk. That game against the Chargers was so freaking horrific. Last week's game, they win by accident because Buffalo didn't want to win. There's no question about it that they did not want the Patriots to have the #1 draft pick in their own division. Forget that. That meant absolutely nothing. Congrats to Joe Milton III. I mean, look, I know what kind of talent that guy has. But as far as the rest of the team and no accountability, how many times, we talked about this with Bill Sparrows too, who's coming up at 9:30 today. There was no accountability the entire season No accountability. He was terrible with stuff that Gerard Mayo was, with how he reacted to some of the media, some of the things he said and didn't say, and then, took it back and beep, beep, beep. And he just was not ready. I don't care about his skin color. I care about, it's a results-oriented business. And the people that still want to compare, like Gerard Mayo and Antonio Pierce, to like what happened with Belichick in 2000 with the Patriots, who went 5-11, and it's a complete different ball game. It's a complete different era. It's very, you don't see. It's very simple. Was progress made with the Patriots this year, or did they take a giant step backwards? Same thing with the Raiders. And the resounding answer is a big resounding no. There was no progression anywhere. It wasn't. Sorry, there wasn't. Meanwhile,
Go ahead. My thing with that too, because he threw in about D'Amico Ryans, and has he forgotten D'Amico Ryans? First of all, is still in the NFL, and D'Amico Ryans more likely will be with the Texans for the next 3 years. I think if they're doing things right, that's the way they're going to do it. Also, let's not forget about Mike out there in Pittsburgh. How long has he been with that team? For over 10 years.
Yeah, I know, but no one ever wants to bring that up. They're just going to say it looks, on Black Monday, and I don't mean it by race. I mean, when all the firings happen, that's what it's called, Black Monday, and it's extended. And there could be more coming as well, whether it's a GM or coaches. We're still early in the process here, as far as getting it all done. But am I saying that some organizations have had unfair practices in the past? There's no question about it. Absolutely. But I'm just taking what's happening this year in scenarios case by case here. And I'm sorry, but Gerard Mayo, I don't care, and Pierce, I don't care what color they are. It doesn't matter. They were terrible. They were not good head coach. They were terrible. Eric Bieniemy, Eric Bieniemy was the hottest commodity that I can remember. Every year for 3-4 years, that guy's name came up. The offensive coordinator at the time for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was linked to every single job, and every single time. And even me, I got caught up in it. I'm like, what do you mean he didn't interview well? I don't understand that. The guy knows, or I thought, knew a lot about football. But what happens is when you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and at the time, Juju Smith-Schuster, and a lot of other players that are really, really good. And this is the Ben Johnson factor as well.
Yep.
Josh Daniels thing too, who's also white, in case people forgot. Josh McDaniels, who tried to become a head coach and sucked. He gets off to a decent start with Denver back in the day, and then goes totally backwards, and we're terrible. The best thing he did all year that year, unfortunately, with those stupid bumblebee uniforms, was beat the Patriots. It was terrible. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen. But look, there's no guarantee that these offensive coordinators are going to be really good head coaches. More times than not, doesn't happen. Now, I know some, like the Andy Reid coaching tree. I know, there are certain coaching trees where coaches have done very well at times. The Patriots are not one of them, with the exception of Billy O'Brien. A lot of coaches from Romeo Crennel, Josh McDaniels, the list is endless, that have tried to go on and become NFL head coaches have failed badly. Mike Vrabel's been a success, and Billy O'Brien, and that's about it from the Belichick coaching tree. I might be missing one other guy, but that's the way. There's no guarantee. No one's going to be Bill. No one's going to be Andy Reid, with very few exceptions. It ain't going to happen. But you have great players around you. Now, I always hear it cracks me up, like, oh, Belichick wouldn't have been anything without Brady, and I'm like, well, what would Chuck Noll have been without Terry Bradshaw? And Terry Bradshaw sucked early on in his career. Mm-hmm. First year they wanted him out. Where would the Steelers be? Where would Dallas be without Roger Staubach? Where would Tom Landry have been without Roger Staubach? I hear these connect. Where would Bill Walsh have been without Joe Montana and Steve Young? You never hear those connections. They always say, oh, well, Belichick would be without Brady. Well, what would all these other coaches be without anybody? So stop it.
Yeah, that's
where would Tom Flores be back in the day without Jim Plunkett and Marcus Allen? I'm not taking anything away from their coaching, but yeah, I mean, great coaches are made by great players and vice versa, usually. And then sometimes I have to go back to my cliche. I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones. So I don't understand when people bring up the connections with coaches and, Super Bowl and quarterbacks are like, oh, and it always seems to be, and I'm not being overly sensitive. It's always, where would Belichick be without Brady? Well, where would Bill Walsh? None of you people ever heard of Bill Walsh before Joe Montana got on the scene. Nobody. No, nobody heard of him. Yep. Most of you didn't even hear about Joe Montana, except Notre Dame phony balonies out there, who was a third-round pick. All right? I mean, the most popular player on the 49ers before he got there was frickin' O.J. Simpson at the end. Fact. People forget he played there at the very end. So when people talk about connections to quarterbacks and coaches, about this coach wouldn't be good without that quarterback, I mean, I don't. Of course not. I mean, that's what happened. It doesn't take away somebody's football model. Bill Walsh with the West Coast offense, phenomenal. Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, two of the greatest coaches of all time. No doubt about it. I mean, it frustrates me when some of the national media associates wins with coaches and their knowledge with quarterbacks. They only seem to do it with a select few, and they never want to go back to the 80s or the 70s. I'm like, well, where would this coach be without that? I mean, they wanted to run Bill Parcells out of town with the Giants after the first year. They wanted to run Chuck Noll out of town before. There was a little more patience back then. And, of course, the salary cap wasn't coming to play, but anyway, we digress. Angel, go ahead.
Well, no, because Jerry from Rhode Island has sent a message in and says, good morning, guys. Low-hanging fruit when they go to the race card and they never go back and name all the white guys who are one and done. And it's not like you had stated, it's not, I don't want anybody to think this becomes some sort of crazy segment, because it's not. But it's just, the whole thing is that when you're a coach, whether you're white, black, green, brown, orange, I don't care what you are, if it's one of those things, and to me, in my opinion, is that Gerard Mayo was not ready. And there's not a school for head coaches. Like, you don't go to head coaching university and figure out what to say to your coordinators, what to say to the media. He wasn't prepared, unfortunately. And I think when it came down to Robert Kraft, he just thought that Gerard Mayo was going to be the exact fit that he needed for New England. And no one can predict the future. Because what if, let's reverse it. What happens if he would have had 3/4 of his season would have been good, 1/4 of it would have been really bad? I think Robert Kraft obviously would change his mind. But as you mentioned, when you can't talk to the media a certain way, and then as it was said by Steve Weiss, the fans were getting on him, the public was getting on him. Listen, if you were just a bad coach, you were just a bad coach.
There's bad teams and bad losses, and then there's bad coaching. And when you don't see a progression, and I'm talking like giant, pathetic steps backwards. I mean, really, the last month of the season was terrible. Awful. And look, Eric Wolf didn't put together any sort of team and should have done a hell of a lot better job. And I thought he should be fired too, to be honest with you, for putting that team around Drake May. But, Robert Kraft sort of fell on the sword yesterday, blamed himself, and he got too sentimental. He got too sentimental with a guy like Gerard Mayo, who clearly was not ready. Meanwhile, the Patriots head coaching, Mike Reese, tweeted this out about 20 minutes ago. They're going to be interviewing Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel. No interviews. They have completed interviews the Patriots have with Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton. And also, the Johnson interview must be virtual, according to NFL rules. Vrabel interviewed with the Jets last week to talk with the Bears as well. Brian Flores, on his interest, said the defensive coordinator, who I also want to steal from the Minnesota Vikings, as I've told you. Mm-hmm. But as a head coach, he said, I would say, if he's interested, I would say yes, but it's not up to me as to whether or not they would want to talk to me. So, or will the Vikings, I forget if I believe he's allowed to. The only reason why is, I'm not sure he has to wait till the 14th. Like Mike McCarthy, who now, along with Pete, the Cowboys denied him to go speak to the Bears. And I'm wondering what Jerry Jones is up to, because if he's serious about Mike McCarthy, then get it done right now and stop messing around. He's doing the same. It seems like we're about to have the same situation he had with Dak Prescott and not signing, King Henry at running back. So it's the Cowboys. They It's going to be really interesting to see what Jerry does down there. But if you're there, if you really want Mike McCarthy back, then just get it done now. All right, Angel, let's take a quick break. Big show coming up today. Chris Price coming up with the Globe at 8:30. Mia O'Brien from 1010XL at 9:05. And Bill Sparrows from the Boston Herald and Bookies.com, senior betting analyst there, will join me at 9:30. All part of the Pete Sheppard Show. More NFL news and quotes and video coming your way next year on the Coastal Sports Network.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber, and I would like you to know that our company has been selling Anderson windows for over 60 years. See the complete line of Anderson windows at any of our 3 locations in North Reading, Beverly, or in Plastown, New Hampshire, or at MoynihanLumber.com.
Hey, everybody, it's Pete Sheppard from the Coastal Sports Network. Want to tell you about my good friend Lou DiMuzio and his company. Lou is the president and founder of Ace Technology Advisors. They're big-time tech specialists. At ATA, they're able to craft, implement, and manage the best and most appropriate solution for your business. They leverage their industry-leading experience and their portfolio of technology partners to improve your best practices and infrastructure. So you can get a hold of them at 888-599-4223. That's 888-599-4223. Check them out on their webpage, www.acetechadvisors.com. That's www.acetechadvisors.com. Or you can email them, sales@acetechadvisors.com. Check out my friend Lou DiMuzio and Ace Technology Advisors.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you. You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All right, class. Let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock. and saw all of these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
The Pete Sheppard Show. It's fun for the whole family, if it's dysfunctional.
Always been willing to do what it takes to win. You're kind of in a win and get in situation, but I think that was a career record for him anyway. But his ability to run, but not just run, but to make big plays. So it's just another dynamic he has, and everything's just on the line now.
He's one of them quarterbacks that have that mentality in his head that he do whatever it takes to win. He has a good knack for seeing where the rush is and when the pocket's open for him to run and get through. And he made some big scrambles for us, especially in the second half that kept him driving alive, especially when we were backed up. So he was like that in college. He was like that in high school. He's like that now. He wants to win, whether he's playing street ball or whether he's in the playoff game. He's determined to win. He'll do whatever it takes to win.
That's Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles, and they're getting ready to host the Washington Commanders on Wild Card Weekend. Should be a great game. It really should. It's going to be interesting. Mia Kimes has some interesting takes on that. She thinks the Bucs have struggled all year long, and she's not totally wrong with quarterbacks who can scramble. We'll get to that in a second. I do want to, in fact, we can get to that now, Angel, as long as we're talking about. Welcome back to the Pete Sheppard Show here on a Hump Day Wednesday. If we could scroll down and let me see, where is it? Scroll down my Twitter page, Angel, you'll see it. It is, yes, it's right under Shaq. NFL and ESPN talks about the Bucs struggling against scrambling quarterbacks.
Really, the first 2 weeks watching the Washington offense, it was like dink and dunk and screen.
Perimeter screen galore.
Oh my God, so many screens.
Can we call sale
Started
again?
the game with a screen. Game one, play one, screen.
All of which is to say, Tampa's lucky they got him week one, right? Because as the year went on, not only did he start seeing the field better, he started attacking downfield. Part of the reason why his numbers against the blitz have been so good this year, second league-wide, by the way, in QBR against the blitz, is that willingness to push the ball downfield. We think about that throw against Cincinnati, right? The infamous game-ending throw where he's got pressure all up in his face and he hits the go ball to McLaurin. And I think for this Tampa game, that's got to be in Bull's mind, that willingness to attack downfield. This is a Bucs defense that has struggled against scrambling quarterbacks all year long. They rank near the bottom of the NFL.
Also struggles covering the ball down the field on the perimeter.
Yeah, they struggle in a lot of ways, to be honest. They struggle in ways that I just think this version of Jane Daniels is very well equipped to attack. Really, the first 2 weeks.
All right. Well, here's the thing, and I know it was week one, but Jaden Daniels was 17 to 24, 184 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Baker Mayfield shredded the Commanders in that game, threw 4 touchdowns, was 24 of 30 for 289 yards. You started to see Bucky Irving was leading rusher in that game. Nobody was talking about him at all, but he started with that game. He had averaged almost 7 yards a catch. Well, he had one long run of 31, so let's be fair. 62 yards, and 31 of that came on one run on nine carries. Godwin and Evans were both playing in that game. So look, there's not do I put a lot of stock in what happened in week one? We're talking 18 weeks later. No, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing some of the best football as well as anybody in the NFL. They're 5-1 in their last 6. They had one little brain cramp in Dallas. They are playing tough, and anybody who goes up against them is going to be in for a long day. And look, some of the numbers back up what Mia Kimes is saying about struggling a little bit defensively. But let me tell you, I won't be shocked if Washington wins that game, but Tampa Bay is going to play a hell of a lot better than they did last week against New Orleans. New Orleans, for whatever reason, always does well against them in Tampa. And they did for about the first half, maybe a little bit longer in that game before Tampa Bay whipped them in the end. I think the Buccaneers are going to beat the Washington Commanders. I have all my pigskin picks on Friday, as will Gabe Morency. But let's continue with that game. How about Todd Bowles talking about Chris Godwin? Asked if he could return for the playoffs.
Given the stuff that you have on any of these guys that might be available in terms of like maybe Servassier or guys that we thought maybe if you made it to the postseason would have a shot.
Servassier won't be available, not at this time. We'll see about Dean, Cade, and Winfield this week.
You mentioned the chance that the D player from Chris Godwin coming back. Is that possible or not?
Not at this time.
Yeah, and I don't think so. I don't think so. He also talked about playing the Commanders again after the Week 1 win.
You know your opponent now. It's going to be Washington. You beat them in Week 1. How much different are they? How much better is Jaden Daniels? What are you going to face Sunday night?
It was his first time starting the first game. They're a lot different. They're a lot better all the way around. We're a different team and they're a different team, so it'll be a tough ball game. He can beat you a ton of ways, from the pocket, out of the pocket, with his leg, with his arm. They got a lot of characters around them that can really play ball, so it's going to be a tough game.
You're not going to fall off with a banana in the tailpipe? Can't get that Beverly Hills cop police officer detective out of my head. He's just not going to fall off with a banana in the tailpipe. Oh, man. All right, here's Dan Quinn, head coach of the Washington Commanders, on how much his team has grown since facing Tampa Bay.
When you look back at that team in Week 1 for what you guys have, how different are you guys now? And in what way specifically is maybe the biggest jump?
Yeah, I think who they are and what they do, meaning us, we were, I would say we were scheme, and we knew we would grow into that, John. All three phases, guys coming together. What we didn't know was really, who they are. And what we've learned over these, 17 weeks, this is a resilient group, man. These guys love to fight. They have a real connection. That's like a really powerful thing. You can see how close they are. You see it on the field, off the field. I love what we stand for. The guys have really put the work in, John, in the situation side of things. And so on the end of the games, I think over the last month, that's probably really expressed itself fully from New Orleans, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and yesterday, that there is a poise that goes on for the players into those spaces. And so I'd say that's, something, from Week 1 to now has definitely changed. I think at that spot, they didn't know who they would become yet. And you have to go and grow through some of those sessions to do that. And so I think that's probably our biggest, change. We knew scheme-wise those things would evolve, but getting the connection going as a team, that's a big deal. Identity, all those kind of things.
All right, here's more from Dan Quinn on Bucs quarterback Baker Mayfield.
And I wonder, he's a veteran and you saw him in Week 1, but what is your early impression of Baker? How does he look maybe even different than when you first saw him?
I think they've just had a fantastic year. I think he's always been able to rip it and been aggressive in and outside the pocket. Having the run game balance for them, I think that's what sets their offense apart this year, Sam. The addition of Irving, their run game, the play pass that goes with it, that is an impressive thing. And so that has been really consistent, through the year, the running game that goes along and matches up well with their play passes.
All right. Look forward to that. And that is going to be the Sunday night game coming up at Ray J. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Angel, if we could scroll down to Pat McAfee, and this is Jerry Jones speaking about the Cowboys situation on the McAfee show, and a pretty good exchange here before we go to break. This is tell me if you can figure this out. I mean, does anybody know what Jerry Jones is trying to say here? We'll let you hear the video, and of course on the audio, and please listen on SR 102.9 The Game on the app if you're in your car. Much better.
Watching Get Up this morning, what a wonderful program you guys have, and learned about this video from Get Up this morning. It was Jerry Jones talking about Mike McCarthy and his contract and interviewing. I'll let Jerry talk because we can't talk for Jerry.
Jerry, is there a reality where Mike is back with a different offensive play call?
Well, anything is possible. And because of contract status.
The guy behind him.
Most of the fans that I have, most of the fans want everybody to be on the incentive plan. Everybody wants it to be on the incentive plan. And so the more you can have the incentive plan, to me, the better you've got the way sports is aligned with sports and a goal of having accomplishment, and you align that with the financial end of it. For instance, I might say, look, I'm going to pay you this much, but then I'll pay you not any more, and I know you want twice that.
Okay.
But if you get to the playoffs or you win a Super Bowl, I'll give you 5 times that.
Oh, you play 75%.
The guy across the street might
Fans
are wrapping their arms around it from behind him.
Exactly, and then you've got a decision. For sure.
I'm a Kleenex. How can you know that if he's not allowed to talk to you until January 14th?
He's a great actor, say, go talk.
He told Mike McCarthy to go talk.
I really would. Go talk.
So it sounds like you
I
will
just
allow
let
him.
Zeke do that.
Gotcha.
Just sign with Chargers.
I don't want anybody here. That's not healthy to have somebody around that wants to be someplace else. Really, it's not. And there's too many ways for everybody to go to be around where you don't want to be.
Of course.
So Greedy. So when Jerry's saying, it's not good to have guys around who want to, does he know that he hasn't given Mike McCarthy an extension or a contract, and he does have to give him permission to go talk? Or is he just going to hold him in limbo forever?
Look, it's so hard to have this conversation because I don't want things to sound disrespectful. I think all of us know less about football for having listened to those 45 seconds. There's literally nothing that he just said that made any sense at all. There are so many things the fans would like, but it's just not the way the sport has ever been. Yes, there are incentives, and by the way, the Cowboys actually just made sure that their backup quarterback Cooper Rush
I did not know that. They told me that before the game. I was trying, and everybody's calling me
$250,000 incentive.
What the heck? Family nonsense.
The few brain cells that I have left are now gone after listening to Jerry Jones. So, Patriot fans, Raider fans, some of you fans out there whose teams have had rotten seasons, I give you Jerry Jones to make you feel better. Okay? I give you Jerry Jones. What is he talking about?
I know, but he made Mike McDaniel seem like a genius after that one.
Oh my God. I so wanted to play the tone up, but it was so funny to listen to McAfee and the boys in the comments in the back.
Yeah, I would enjoy that even better. It's like, hey, what's a creepy guy back there? Look, Jerry, can you see behind you?
Real quickly, the next video underneath, Angie, before we go to break, a little more comedy here. What happened? There's always shenanigans that happen on TNT, the one right below. And last night, Kenny Smith and Ernie and Chuck and Shaq were going at it at the end of the in between games, between the Lakers getting humiliated by Dallas on the road, and then the Celtics storming ahead and whipping the Denver Broncos. The Denver Nuggets. By the way, last night, is Mike Anderson along with, what's his name? Who's a coach with the brothers that I hate? I can't stand him. The Lakers wasn't bad last night. Who am I thinking of, Angel? Why am I having a brain cramp with this? The former Knicks head coach's brother. Van Gundy. So Stan Van Gundy and Jeff Van Gundy. But Stan was doing the color commentating last night, and he was actually pretty good. Usually he annoys the shit out of me. But Anderson, I cannot tell you how many times that, Jokic isn't playing tonight. Every basket the Celtics made, yep. And then Jokic isn't playing. Well, Derek White didn't play either. And I'm not comparing Derek White to Jokic, okay? But it was insufferable. I watched the entire game last night. I'm going on 3 hours sleep. I watched the post game as well. But, I sent out a tweet last night to TNT. I said, yeah, we get it. Joker's not playing. Derek White isn't playing either. They didn't mention it one time in the broadcast. They mentioned it after the game. Ernie brought it up after the game. But anyway, in between, this is at the time where Florida had played early on at 7 o'clock, as you said. The Gators absolutely smashed Tennessee last night in Gainesville, crushed them. by 30 points, 73-43. Elijah Martin, formerly of FAU, was a big part of that win. 18 points there. But here's some shenanigans going on in the TNT studio.
You know what it reminds me of? What's that? What's he drinking in his cup? Let me just take his cup. Yo, man,
That's gotta be Diet Coke.
Give
me a cup, man. Who coaches your daughter?
Oh, yeah, Florida Gators.
Florida Gators?
Yeah, Gators.
Okay.
Go, Gators! Got him.
This was not the bunny from before. But I'd love to see the reaction from the chuckster.
In slow motion.
That is the largest thing we've ever dropped out of the ceiling.
This is big. That's too I can't be jumping alligators. This is way too good job, Eric and TK.
Tom Sullivan. Von Turney, call me Tom. Call me Tom.
Yo, this is way too big to be dropping this.
I hope that whole production crew, it's obviously the guys, but I hope the whole production crew goes over to Amazon with them as well.
Yeah, I mean, they get it. It doesn't matter who's playing, you know. Trust me, Charles didn't want anything to do with the Lakers last night and to talk about that game. They laid a gigantic egg without Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. It was just awful. You had SportsCenter this morning at 6, thought that's the lead story, which is absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, it doesn't matter who's playing. The pregame, like last night on the East Coast, it started at 7. Then you go into the game. Even if you don't want to see it, come back and an hour later look at halftime. There's always some great stuff. I love Kenny's analysis when he goes to the board as well. So I like it better when he races Shaq and somebody tweaks a hammy or falls, and it's always kind of fun. I miss the fact that Kenny doesn't go inside the board anymore. You notice that? Kenny would walk behind the screen and go inside the board. It'd be little Kenny the Jet Smith sitting there, on the screen. They don't do that anymore, which I find surprising, because that was always pretty cool to watch a little Kenny, break down the plays. Anyway, all right, next hour, which is we are there, we're going to take a break. Chris Price, Boston Globe, going to join me at 8:30. Mia O'Brien from 1010XL and Helmets and Heels, and also ESPN Plus, which she does a tremendous job of broadcasting as well. She will join us. We're going to talk about not only the Jaguars, we're going to talk about what happened last night in Gainesville with Florida's thumping of Tennessee, knocking them out from the undefeated ranks. And then Bill Sparrows will join me at the bottom of the hour as well from the Boston Herald, and senior betting analyst from bookies.com. Ada Martinez in the house. It's cold here in Southwest Florida. That's okay. You guys are all giving us the bird. I get it, because it's 2 degrees in some parts of the country, or even less, it's 0. My cousin coaches big-time volleyball out in South Dakota. I don't know how else she does it. I don't get it. I've got come down here in Florida and coach, Lauren, please, instead of South Dakota. But she loves it out there. She married a Chiefs fan, so that's disappointing. But great guy. They just had their second child, by the way, Lewis. So a couple days ago, or last week. I lose track. Who the hell can keep track of South Dakota? I barely can keep track of what's going on here in Fort Myers. Anyway, it's all part of the Pete Sheppard Show. Whatever else you want to talk about here. Hour number 2 coming up next on the Coastal Sports Network.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber, and I would like you to know that our company has been selling Anderson windows for over 60 years. See the complete line of Anderson windows at any of our 3 locations in North Reading, Beverly, or in Plastown, New Hampshire, or at MoynihanLumber.com.
Hey, everybody. It's Pete Sheppard from the Coastal Sports Network. Want to tell you about my good friend Lou DiMuzio and his company. Lou is the president and founder of Ace Technology Advisors. They're big-time tech specialists. At ATA, they're able to craft, implement, and manage the best and most appropriate solution for your business. They leverage their industry-leading experience and their portfolio of technology partners to improve your best practices and infrastructure. So you can get a hold of them at 888-599-4223. That's 888-599-4223. Check them out on their webpage, www.acetechadvisors.com. That's www.acetechadvisors.com. Or you can email them, sales@acetechadvisors.com. Check out my friend Lou DiMuzio and Ace Technology Advisors.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And, with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have anybody to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. I know you won't, because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen.
Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick and proud aunt. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing. But not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. 1 in 6. That little girl sitting alone at the playground, she can't play like the other kids. She doesn't have the energy because she's hungry. School lunch will be her only meal today. It breaks my heart that this is the reality in our country, but it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. This food is then provided to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about using your imagination, learning, and having fun. These children shouldn't have to miss out on simply being a kid because they're hungry. To find out how you can help end childhood hunger in your community, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You want the best in sports and entertainment? You got it. Now, back to the Pete Sheppard Show.
The relationship, we met for, I want to say, an hour yesterday. I think there's the competitive spirit of his, can represent, post-game, especially in a season or a game that nobody likes. It could allude to a relationship being one way. I think I was very direct with him. He was very honest, and it was great terms items that we were discussing. Discussed multiple things, including without wavering, that it's not acceptable to leave the game and won't be tolerated in the future. And he embraced accountability, and it was. I wouldn't say there's anything necessarily to fix as much as we had to clear the air in a rough and tumultuous situation.
Hey, Charlie, come here. Charlie Brown, come here. I got a football I'd like you to kick. I may or may not pull it away as you come up, you fucking clown. What a joke he is. The absolute joke. Yeah, he had a face-to-face with Tyreek Hill, and they worked it all out. I mean, it is just so freaking wishy-washy to hear Mike McDaniel in any way, shape, or form and try to take that man seriously when talking about coaching and coaches that should have been fired. He should have been one of them. I mean, that wishy-washy Charlie Brown style, despite his appearance of trying to look cool, he tries to be like the football version of Fonzie. Why don't you, with those glasses, we get a leather jacket and a T-shirt, okay? This is just unbelievable. Mike McDaniel saying, he and Chris Greer, which I saw the video yesterday, talking about Tyreek Hill. And, oh, yeah, he said in the future, Angel, that you heard at the end, in the future, if he tries to leave a game, that will not be tolerated anymore. Yeah, right, great. Just in the nick of time right there. Just in the nick of time. Yeah. Meanwhile, here's Chris Greer, Dolphins GM.
Yeah, I know that. I'm surprised it took that long to ask it. And really, when I said that, and I'm not trying to backtrack, I believe in that, but I will always support a group of guys that have worked with a believe in, that tirelessly works to improve, and that group did nothing but work, and they still is.
All right, I'm going to keep it going. But he's talking about the Miami Dolphin offensive line. He had some not so nice things to say not too long ago.
Hardest working group in the building. If you stay after practice, and you guys seen there sometimes, you guys go back out and walk in the locker. Those guys are still out on the field working. And so with that group, it started the 2023 offseason. It was, are they good enough? Whatever. And we were the number one offense, number one yards per rush. And so we ran it back with a lot of those guys while adding Brewer, who was an addition that people weren't concerned about because they were focused on another player that wasn't here, and rightfully so. That player was a good player for us. But adding Patrick Paul, we feel that he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, right. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Jonas Smith on Tyreek Hill's comments.
I'm not going to speak for Tyreek, respectfully. Tyreek spoke for himself. I can, only speak for myself. And, we all men, man. We all feel differently about certain things. We handle situations differently. And, rightfully so, he handled the situation how he felt he should have handled it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, your captain and your best receiver decides, he looks at the scoreboard, doesn't like that Kansas City's getting shellacked in Denver by the Broncos, and takes himself out of the game. Here's more from Missouri, Jonas Smith, on the mentality going into next season.
I would definitely say is definitely a lot more things, more house cleaning rules that we could clean up on.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to equate to wins? It's hard to say. You know what I mean? But, you definitely need structure anytime you're striving to do something great. So there's a lot of things that we need to clean up, as a team, speaking individually for myself, that I can improve on and get better. And again, I'm just going to continue to speak for myself. But where we are as a team, like I alluded to it yesterday, I think we all know the foundation that was set. And we got a good foundation. We just got to continue to carry that out. And the leaders in this locker room continue to stand on that and, continue to relay that message throughout the 2025 season coming
up. The foundation. The foundation is your quarterback can't stay healthy. He's one concussion away from being knocked out of the league. Your best receiver wants out. And the foundation is crumbling, okay? There's a lot of cracks in the foundation. It's crumbling, and your head coach is a buffoon. So I don't know what foundation you think you have, but it ain't going far with that. It's not going to happen. Good luck. you're stuck in that mediocre to be a little bit less than mediocre as a franchise. And, next year you're going to have less fans there than you had this year. It's just you got to change the coach because you are not winning anything with that guy at the helm.
Yep.
Not at all. There's more stuff coming out about the Patriots. There's several stories out there now, which I'll get to with Chris Price. Here's one. After an uncompetitive loss in Arizona, Gerard Mayo surprised Patriots execs and coaches when he opted to play cards with players on the plane ride back rather than watch the film with assistants. That's according to The Athletic. One staff member said, quote, "I can't say I've seen that before." See, there's more of these type of stories coming up. Also, the demotion of Steve Belichick, who was calling defensive plays and doing a pretty good job before he got demoted. And Covington took over as DC, and that's when Steve left to go to be the defensive coordinator at Washington. But, Angel, if we could scroll down, speaking of the Belichick, to the Pat McAfee, it's only about 3 down. On the Pat McAfee show yesterday, Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick, who's now going to go and coach with his dad at UNC. Interesting ride, interesting conversation on the Pat McAfee show yesterday.
Coach, I'd like to, if you could tilt the phone over to your son, to Steve, and ask him what it's like in his short time at North Carolina. Steve, what's up? Good to see you, buddy. What's it like working with your dad? Steve. Obviously, we know you've worked with your dad much in the past, but now at the college level, a new scenery, new place. What's it like being reunited, and what do you think your this whole path is going to be?
I'm just excited to be here. I took the red eye a couple nights ago, so trying to build the staff, trying to build the team. We've got a long way to go, but yeah, got to hit the road now and see what's going to happen. Got to get some good players on the team, and figure it out from here. But got to get this guy on the road, bring him to college. He's dressed a little bit nicer than me, but it's all about the personality. You know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah.
Hey, a personality and the resume. It seems like you cut your teeth, obviously, with the greatest dynasty in the history of football. Then you go back to college to Washington last year. How big of an adjustment was it? What was it like coaching college versus the NFL?
No, I had a blast. I really appreciate Coach Fish, all those players out of UW. It was awesome. It was far from the East Coast, from the right coast, where I'm from. But no, it's good to be back here. But I love working with those guys. They're hungry, and we'll see what we can do here.
Jesus God, if you close your eyes, you would think it was Bill Belichick talking, wouldn't you?
Yep.
I mean, he sounds just like him. Same inflection, same tone, same everything. It's just it's unbelievable.
It also proves my point when I keep saying to folks, the left coast, and he said the right coast. I'm telling you, guys live on the East Coast. We for the longest, we've always said the left coast. But he's just like his dad. The way his mouth moves, even if you just watch the video, everything is just like Bill. But hey, listen, he's a mastermind. What else can you do?
Yeah, there's no question. And it's going to be really interesting. And if I'm a Boston radio station or somebody, even if you're not in Boston or whatever, I would seriously think about picking up North Carolina football next year. Seriously, because you will get listeners. Just like you did when Tom Brady came down to Tampa Bay, and I believe WEI picked up Buccaneer broadcast and put it on their AM signal. I think you'll get listeners. I think you could sell it. I think if you're a salesperson, that you'd be able to sell Bill Belichick. There are a lot of people in business that are still very loyal to him, and I'll bet you any money. And certainly their games. And Boston College is doing some really great things with Bill O'Brien. There's no question about that. But initially, you're going to have a lot of converted college football fans, at least faking it that they're semi-interested to watch North Carolina games, at least early on, Angel, when they play. There's no doubt about it. There's no question about it that they will have a following in New England. And I want to see them do well, obviously, but I don't want to see them go up, beat the Hurricanes. But it's going to be fascinating to watch the North Carolina Tar Heels next year. It really is, especially early on. I think they open up with Charlotte, so they should win that.
By the way, I am planning on camping out before the season begins, maybe starting in March outside of Bill's office to see if we can get him on here, number one. And number two, we're we're gonna get him on here on the network. So I'm planning on I'm doing a camp out for whatever you want to call it. Camp out for Bill.
Yeah, no question. What else I want to play? It's another. Oh no, let's get to the Bears for a second here. And this is another clusterfuck of a team. First of all, we'll go right down because they're going to reportedly interview Pete Carroll. They wanted to interview Mike McCarthy, but they can't because Jerry Jones is playing games again until he's got 6 days now to get it done with Mike McCarthy. Otherwise, Mike can give him the bird and say, I can go interview with anybody. Will Jerry Jones re-sign Mike McCarthy? Why hasn't he already, if he's that serious about it? You heard the clown video earlier that we showed, and nobody can understand what he was saying. But let's get to the Bears. Here's owner George McCaskey responding to the sell the team chants at Soldier Field.
Yeah, it's understandable. As Kevin mentioned, our fans are passionate. They're incredibly frustrated. They wanted to make their voices heard. I was more bothered by the week before when Lions fans tried to take over Soldier Field and force the home team to go to a silent snap count. Fortunately, that didn't happen. It's understandable that Bears fans would sell their tickets because of the way the season has gone. And the challenge for us is to put a team on the field that Bears fans are so excited about, they're not interested in selling their tickets.
Yeah, well, look, I can relate. There was a time, the Rod Rust year that we talk about with the Patriots, and I covered that team. It was 1990, 91. The only time the Patriots sold out the stadium was, I think, week 1. I can't remember who they even played. I know they lost. But the only other time was at the end of the season. It was the year the Giants won their second Super Bowl. They played the Giants to end the season in Foxborough. Giants were a big 15-point favorite. I'll never forget it because I took them. I took the Patriots plus the 15. Patriots nothing to play for except for pride. And I believe they squeaked out a 13-10 win over the Giants. The Giants squeaked out a 13-10 win over the Patriots, something like that. It's 13-10, 17-13, something like that. And it was 99.9% Giants fans at the stadium, at Foxborough Stadium, whatever they called it back then. 99.9%. It was embarrassing. And the Patriots nearly pulled it out. And then, of course, the Giants go on to beat Buffalo in the Super Bowl. That great Super Bowl with the missed field goal at the end. All right, more from the Bears. And by the way, speaking of fans taking over, I forgot to mention this in the Gator game last night in Gainesville. And I'm going to talk with Mir about this. Mir O'Brien coming up at 9:05. Besides Florida thumping Tennessee, Angel, a lot of kids didn't get to see this game.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
The people sold. The kids. A lot of the kids were escorted out of the student section right before the game started because somebody in the Gator PR department decided to sell a holiday package, a 3-pack of tickets, to student tickets, sold them to anybody. And they got to sit in the student section. They paid for the package. And the kids that were down there, I think they're just like you just go to the section, it's kind of first come, first serve, I think. I think that's the case. But anyway, a whole bunch of kids had to be escorted out of their seats for regular fans to come in and take their seats because the Gators sold a 3-day package, holiday package, included the Tennessee game, which I find mind-blown. Stupidity.
Wow.
I mean, that's just not right.
It sure isn't.
It isn't. But we'll get with more with me about that. More with the Bears. Kevin Warren on Ryan Poles, the GM.
Yeah, one, I think, we made it clear. I made it clear on early December. And as Ryan talked about today, he is our point person on the search. He's our general manager. He's head of football operations.
All right. Now, Kevin Warren, the former Big Ten commissioner, is also obviously a big part of the Chicago Bears, says they need to do better.
From a critical standpoint is we need to do better here. I mean, collectively. And it's not them. When I say we, I'm talking about me, collectively. And I'm going to continually pour every ounce of energy in here from a business operations standpoint, from a stadium standpoint, from a football standpoint, to provide all the resources that I have access to, all of my energy and insight to win. And I'm confident that we will win here. We will win championships here. It's not going to be easy. And I know sometime in life, you got to go down to be able to come up, but that's part of it.
More from Ryan Poles on the Bears. This is from Ryan Poles, the Bears head coaching search.
Yeah, no. So I'll end up selecting a coach. I'm taking the lead on that, and George and Kevin have put me in charge of that. And that'll be the relationship between the coach and I.
And here's more about the situation.
In terms of the interview panel, it'll be George, Kevin, Matt Feinstein, who does admin with me, football admin, Jeff King, who's on my staff, Liz Geis, who's in HR.
Here's more from Ryan Poles.
It's been a long season where those Mondays have been really, really difficult because we continue to come up short. And I have to take responsibility as the leader of the football operation for that. And I also have to make sure that we find solutions to make sure that we don't make that mistake again and we can continue to improve.
Yeah, and there's a cut that we don't have, and we always thank Total Sports Prep for everything that they do. I was watching the video this morning, Angel, and he went on yesterday. He's like, we are really, really going to dig deep this time in finding the right personnel to coach this team. Sure. What? Mm-hmm. What? You're going to dig deep this time? I mean, it was like, again, some of the things that are said is just unbelievable. I'm telling you, you get football brain cramp when you start listening to Jerry Jones, which is absolutely one of the. He's had a lot of goofy things all year long. We all know that. I told you I almost felt bad. You start making fun. What he said yesterday, it's just unbelievable. And then you have Ryan Poles, who goes on yesterday and talks about we're really, really going to do a better job. We're going to really dig deep. His quote, we are going to dig deeper this time. What? Oh, my. So you think all these other teams have problems like my Patriots and, the Raiders? There's a lot of shit going on in the NFL, a lot of crazy comments and stories and with the firing reaction. But you look at the Bears situation, I look at Dallas' situation, and, I feel better about myself sometimes and about the team. Anyway, joining me right now, the one and only beat reporter for the New England Patriots from the Boston Globe, Christopher Price joins us this morning. Good morning, Christopher. How are you? Is your head in a whirlwind? All this stuff going on. I mean, it's just not with the Patriots, but trying to keep up with everything.
It's never dull. Well, that's one of the great things, Pete. It's never dull, man. Keeps guys like you and I in a job. And so, the carousel keeps spinning. It's going to be interesting to see what they do up here in New England with, Gerard Mayo on the outs. Right now, I can tell you that signs are pointing to Mike Vrabel as being the guy, but, you got to let the process play out. We'll see.
Yeah, look, we'll get to that in a second. These other stories are coming out. I'm sure you've heard a lot of these. What the stuff I'm about to bring up is there's stories that are being relieved The Athletic about. I'm sure you heard these rumors, or when you travel with him, you're on the plane, aren't you?
No, we're not on the plane with them. No,
not on the plane with them. I thought I wasn't sure how that worked anymore. I know it used to be that way. At least with some professional teams, you ride with the team. But reports about just the Arizona game coming back and not watching film, and going back and play cards with the guys, and one staffer anonymously said, I've never seen anything like this. Those kinds of stories, I'm not surprised. And of course, the losing of the locker room. I'm sure you've heard a lot of that stuff for most of the year.
Yeah, one of the things, Pete, was that our good friend Mike Reese had a good phrase the other day when he talked about what it was like to cover this team this season. It was absolutely exhausting, and there was very little football talk.
Yeah,
for when it comes to covering a football team, it was a lot of soap opera stuff. It was a lot of, he said, she said, gossip, who was talking this about who, and, who was doing this. And so there wasn't a lot of focus on football this year, and they kind of lost their way a little bit. And, as well as I do that this franchise has been so consistent for such a long time. To have something like this now over an 18-month span is absolutely unheard of. So they have to figure out a way to kind of rein everything back in, and the move away from Gerard Mayo, I think, was one step in that direction. It's going to be interesting to see if they get Vrabel, if they end up getting another guy. But yeah, the last year, it was a unique experience when you talk about covering the New England Patriots.
Look, to me, the whole year was about lack of progression and pathetic at the end to the last 4 weeks. Lack of progression and no accountability. And there was none with this team. And now you're hearing about, and then you hear the other story about Steve Belichick. And I was like, why is he going to Washington? And obviously he went to Washington to be the DC out there or coach defense with the Huskies because he was demoted by Gerard Mayo for Covington, which was absolutely ridiculous. And it was a complete misstep again on Gerard Mayo's part because Steve Belichick had done a pretty good job, don't you think? Not just saying it because he's Bill's son. He had done a damn good job the last several years. He was basically calling the plays.
Yeah, I think the two of them, working together, I think the two of them did a really good job last year. I could see why they wanted to promote, or at least Mayo wanted to promote Covington. The two had been very close. They'd worked together for an extended period of time. And really, outside of Steve Belichick, he was probably his closest colleague, at least on the staff, going back a couple of years. But look, when it comes to Covington, I think his legacy is going to be written in that Indianapolis game where the Colts had that 19-play drive at the end of the game to kind of really drive a stake through the heart of the Patriots. So they're in the process of wiping the slate clean. I will say this, the one guy who was accountable all year, at least on the coaching staff, well, Mayo came out and really kind of worked to say, look, this is all on me. Alex Van Pelt. And the process wasn't always maybe what you'd hoped for. The execution wasn't always what you'd hoped for, but he would come out and he would talk with us every Thursday and he would say, look, it's on me. He was consistently accountable over the course of the 2024 season.
No, I'll give him credit for that. I think he did a lousy job. And I don't know if he was overruled by Gerard Mayo. I mean, there's some of the stuff and some of the plays that was so obvious. He used to sit there and call the plays. Here comes. And then the other, and then the Ramondre Stevenson story, which also was out there, because he absolutely should have been benched, Mr. Fumbleitis, as talented as he can be at times. He was supposed to be benched for the Charger game. Everybody knew it. In fact, in the pregame, everybody was talking about Gibson starting, blah, blah. And what happens? Here's Ramondre Stevenson because of the sentimentality. I mean, that's just not a good sign of a head coach. Not as bad as Mike McDaniel and Charlie Brown over there with what he did and how he reacted to Tyreek Hill taking himself out of the game, claiming he didn't know if he was sick or this. I mean, that's a whole other sort of nonsense going on in Miami over there. But this is just another version of another story about why Gerard Mayo was not ready to coach this team. He says he's going to bench. We're going to be disciplined. Stevenson and Belichick absolutely would have benched him. There's no doubt about it. But he decided to start him. Change of heart right before kickoff. It's just not a good look. And then they get creamed.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I will say this, Pete, and I agree with you that Bill would have handled it differently. Ramondre was one of their best and most consistent offensive performers this year. I know the fumbles were awful, but the numbers he put up, they couldn't afford to have him on the bench. They couldn't afford to sit him down for an extended period of time. Look, Antonio Gibson played well, but you had a consistent performer in a guy like Ramondre Stevenson. You had to put him out there. I understand. I understand that.
Send a message. You got to send a message, even if it's for a series or two. It is for a series or two. I'm sorry, it's not that big. The way that team played and the way that the shitty defense against the Chargers and so many other things. The Indianapolis Colts game is just one of. I could sit here and write a book about how pathetic and how Covington and the entire team, the lack of adjustments. And I know that the defense was supposed to be, if there was supposed to be a bright spot, it was supposed to be the defense this year, and they took 5,000 giant steps backwards, except for Gonzalez.
Yeah,
I mean, they just did, and it's. So I don't know. Van Pelt on the offense, does he get overruled at times by Mayo? Does he not? I seriously. The right thing was done. And I'm sorry. I know a lot of people out there want to play the race card, and that's all BS to me. It's about Robert Kraft. I give him credit for falling on the sword yesterday, saying all the right things. But this guy was pushed on the whole team for 3+ years, and he just simply wasn't ready.
Yeah, Pete, that's what it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned. I agree with you on that point that he was not prepared the way you should be prepared. He should have been a coordinator. He should have spent a couple of years doing that. And look, that's on Mayo, but that's also on Kraft and pushing him into the position. And, you bring up a good point. Robert Kraft fell on the sword. He said, look, it's on me. This is on me. This is, I'm culpable here. And so I think Mayo is a good guy. I think Mayo, did well at times over the course of the year, but I also think too, he wasn't helped by the folks around him an awful lot. He wasn't exactly set up for success. The other thing too on the defense, I'm willing to grade it. I'm saying, look, I'm not going to sit here and say Covington's a great defensive coordinator, but I'm willing to grade him on a curve a little bit because they lost Barmore for an extended period of time. They lost Bentley for an extended period of time, and Peppers was out for roughly half the season. When he came back, he really wasn't himself. And so you put those three guys all together in that group, that's a big part of what they want to get done defensively. To have those guys miss a large chunk of the season, that's awful difficult for any defensive coordinator. Again, I'm not giving him a pass here because I think he deserves to be fired. But at the same time, that's part of the conversation when you talk about Covington's overall season.
That's fair as well. But then you look at, I mean, they're rushing 6 guys against Justin Herbert and can't even get a sniff of where he is. I mean, consistently, how many times? I would have rather seen that defense play 3rd and 2 because every 3rd and long, they gave it up every single time it seemed this year. So, except for the Bears game, that's really the only one. But other than that, it's just like I would be sitting here watching with my friend, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, like, oh, doesn't matter. Just fire it over the middle. There will be no linebacker can cover anybody, you know. And then it's just, you know. And then you had what's his name talking about the fans last week or 2 weeks ago.
July.
It just the wrong thing to say. You never ever, even if it's true, you don't say that about your fan base. So
you know who handled it perfectly, Pete, was the special teams coordinator, Jeremy Springer. He was at the podium a couple days later, and we asked him about the booze, and he said, "Look, man, if you don't want to get shot at, don't join the Army."
Yeah,
and that was the perfect way to handle it. You know, that kind of phraseology, because that's a no-win situation if you're Jelani Tavai to say, you know, the fans got to know their place. But that was just part of it. I mean, that was part of the last. It was very surreal down there over the last week plus, because you not only had that, you had the game, the regular season finale, where they win the game. Joe Milton plays well, and the fans booed them off the field. And that was just strange to hear that, to be in that atmosphere, in that environment. It was very odd. And then you add all the other layers on top of that. It was just a very surreal finish to the season for the New England Patriots.
Well, yeah, and you know that the fans weren't booing Joe Milton. They're booing the organization. They're booing the fact. And I give the Buffalo Bills credit. Even in defeat, they outcoached the Patriots because they didn't want again to get the number 1 pick in the division, which I completely understand. But we all know they didn't give their best effort either for the last quarter and a half either, right?
I mean, the Bills, honestly, man, and you know this. You've been at games before. The Bills travel really well.
Yeah.
And so there were thousands of Bills fans in the building. And so I think really, you know, I can't really put too fine a point on it, or, you know, really kind of put my finger on it here, but it felt like the Bills were pulling people out of the stands at the end of the game, putting Bills.
Well, I was telling a story earlier. I mean, my first year covering the team that I had to be, it was 1990 when they were back, the Rod Rush years. I mean, it was the Rod Rush. It was terrible. And I remember that game against the Giants at the end of the season, the year they won their second Super Bowl. They had to come to Foxborough. I don't know if you remember that. I can't remember when you started covering the team.
I was in college. Yeah.
That was the Patriots were 15-point underdogs. They played tough. They probably should have won the game. All Giants fans at then whatever it was called, Foxborough, Gillette, whatever it was, all Giants fans, and the Giants did squeak out. I think it was a 13-10 or a 17-13.
It was a close game.
A game win. And then everybody was all over Parcells and the Giants. I remember leading up to their playoffs. Oh, if they can't beat the Patriots, you know, what are they going to? And I'm like, you people, calm. Even back then, calm down. But everybody, the only good games they sold out were that game and maybe week 1, who I forget who they lost to. But I'm talking about, you know, I had to be there. That, the Lisa Olsen situation, all that minutia that was going on. And they used to beg people. It was before Stacey got there. He used to beg people to come and cover the game.
Mm-hmm.
So being the young broadcaster.
And look, I'm not saying they're headed back to that. I'm not saying they're headed back to, but
no.
There's going to be, you know, the end of this season was a lean stretch for this franchise, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they do this offseason to try and win the crowd back.
All right. Now, obviously, my preference would be obviously Mike Vrabel and go get Josh McDaniels and bring him back. I don't want to hear about offensive coordinators. I'm sure, you know, Ben Johnson would be the hot commodity, just like Eric Bieniemy was, and now he's not getting a sniff. It's great when these OCs all become hot commodities because they have all great players around them, great offensive studs around them. And I find more times than not, Chris, that when they come into the NFL as head coaches after being you know, put up on a pedestal for their OC job, it usually doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. It usually doesn't work out.
Yeah, so I agree with you. When I think specific to this situation for the Patriots, they need a guy who has been a head coach before. They can't walk into this situation with a first-year head coach. I think Ben Johnson is going to be a really good coach in this league. I think Aaron Glenn is going to be a really good coach in this league. Liam Cohen. There's a lot of really fascinating names out there, but you need a guy who's been around the block. The thing that I'm most fascinated about is how are they going to handle the GM job? If Vrabel comes in and says, look, I want my own guy, I want charge of personnel, I want the draft board, and if the Crafts are as hot for him as we all think they are, I think this is going to lead to maybe a minimized role for Elliott Wolf, Matt Groh, and it's going to be fascinating to watch that dynamic play out. Maybe Elliott Wolf and Mike Vrabel can get along. Who knows? But you're not only going to see changes on the coaching staff, specific to the head coach, obviously, you're going to get new coordinators. You're also going to see some changes in the front office as well.
Have you got to speak with Elliott Wolf at all? I haven't heard him say.
Well, no, not since the end of the season.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting to hear. I'd like to hear. If I'm Elliott Wolf, what's the first question you would ask him? I have a one-word question. I would just say, for the whole thing, why? ... What would you ask him? What would you ask him first?
My first question right now is, how do you feel about working with Mike Vrabel? Right off the bat, because that's going to be the power dynamic in Foxborough. And if Vrabel wants to work with Elliott Wolf, then I think there's a path forward for both of them. But look, I'll give him credit. He didn't budge off number 3 last year when he got a lot of offers. He took the right guy in Drake May. He executed that. The rest of the draft, the rest of the offseason was weak as far as I'm concerned. I'm putting it politely here. If he's going to be hanging around here, he's going to have a really good offseason to if he wants to be able to continue.
Well, and then, as far as the draft goes, I mean, did you hear the rumors that I did before they lost the game? There were some rumors, far-fetched rumors, I think, going around about how they were going to trade Drake May, get Deion Sanders here, draft Shadur Sanders, and flip the pick with May and get Travis Hunter as well. I mean, that started, and I'm like,
yeah.
Look, ever since the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004 and the way they did it, I was like, I'm never going to say never about anything ever in the rest of my life, because that was the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen in sport. But did you hear any of that stuff as well? You think there was even a residue of truth to it?
No. Drake May is their guy moving forward, and they'd be foolish to move off that. Drake May is clearly the quarterback of the future for this franchise. I think he's the right guy. They have 3 or 4 guys who I don't want to call them untouchable, but May is one of those guys. Gonzalez is one of those guys that are foundational elements for this franchise moving forward. So no, I wouldn't think that they'd be interested in trading Drake.
If they had if not now, obviously, but if they had gotten the number 1 pick, what do you think they would have done? I mean, because obviously the first 2, Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, are going to go 1-2. There's no doubt about that. And then I'm sure they would have their eyes set on Travis Hunter, but now that seems the Giants may end up taking or whatever. But certainly they have a lot of directions they can go in because they need help in so many areas: wide receiver, offensive line, linebacker. I mean, the list of defensive back, the list is endless. What direction do you think they should go in with the draft?
Well, I think it all depends on what they do in free agency. I think if they crush free agency, and look, if T. Higgins is available, and he isn't franchised, you slide a blank check across the table and say, look, fill in the amount here. And then you take that 4th pick and maybe you trade down and you get one of the tackles. You get either Banks or Campbell or Connerly, and then you're able to
Texas, I love. I forget his name.
I don't think anyone at number 4. I don't think any of the tackles at number 4 is a worthwhile pick. I think you can trade back a little bit to say 7 or 8 and take one of those tackles. But look, hey, if Travis Hunter is there at number 4,
you take him.
You think long and hard about it anyway, man, because he's a special player. He's not a generational player, but he's a guy who can, if you bring him in here and you can say, look, you can do both. You can play offense and defense, but we're going to limit you. We're going to give you a package of, 10 plays on offense. We're going to put you at cornerback with Christian Gonzalez. We're going to have, the next generation of great New England defensive backs following in a tradition of, Ty Law, Laurie Malloy, Rodney Harrison. You're going to be the next, you're going to follow in that line. And we're going to have 10 plays for you on offense. We're going to treat you like Marcus Jones. We're going to use you as an offensive option from time to time as we see fit. Start to think about it, right? Travis Hunter, New England uniform, paired alongside Christian Gonzalez, that would look awful good.
Yeah, but do you think they would be better using him? Just what you said, but the opposite. Maybe 10 plays on defense and more so on offense. I mean, Drake, they need a top-notch wide receiver. And if they got a T. Higgins, which I think they'd have to Jedi mind trick him over here, they'd have to. I mean, money does talk, but it didn't talk for Brandon Ayuk last year, and it didn't. You're wondering. I think a lot of these guys are going to wait to see who is coaching the Patriots, as you said, and. And I think that's going to be a big factor in trying to lure free agents here because they have the cash to do it. We all know that. They have the cash. They got the capital to do it. But, are they in a bad shape right now like they used to be where free agents are going to go, not yet?
The other thing you got to remember, Pete, is that it's not only about the elite level free agents. It's not only about T. Higgins and guys like that. You have to go out and identify veteran guys that other guys want to play with. They had those types of guys here in New England for an awful long time. You have to find a Chris Long, a Martellus Bennett, a Brian Waters,
Edelman,
a Algie Crumpler. Those types of veterans who are culture builders, who are guys who can come into your locker room and help get your franchise from here to here. Those are the types of guys that you need to find in addition to those elite level free agents.
Okay, when you mentioned Crumpler, and he had it, but I can't get over the drop pass against the Jets in 2010.
Oh.
I can't get that game is totally different if he makes that catch. I'm absolutely convinced of it because they had just stopped and blocked a field goal. I think the Jets had marched all the way down the field. Either they blocked the field goal, or it was a chip shot, or they missed it. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. Patriots drive all the way down. Crumpler's wide open in the end zone. Brady hits him. He drops it, and the rest is history.
Like a knife through the heart.
I hate that play.
Like a knife through the heart. But you know what I mean.
Am I wrong in saying that I think that game would have been totally different. The Jets would have been devastated. They're playing people forget how great that 2010 team was in the regular season. They rivaled the 2007 team as far as putting up points and all that stuff. And when he dropped that ball, I'm like, oh, no.
But you know what I mean, though, in terms of guys that you need. Guys that can recruit other guys.
Yeah.
You know?
No question about it. Now, if Vrabel comes in to play here, and hopefully it's going to be sooner rather than later, because they've obviously they're going to interview Ben Johnson, they've interviewed Byron Leftwich, Pep Hamilton, all the Rooney Rule, phony baloney stuff that all these teams go through, and I think it's a good rule in place. But we all know it's set up to be It's just we all know it's fraudulent.
Yeah.
Does Josh McDaniels want to come back and be the offensive coordinator with the Patriots? Or if he doesn't, who do you think Mike Vrabel would target?
Well, the name that we're hearing an awful lot about is Tommy Rees, who's the tight ends coach in Cleveland that Vrabel developed quite an affinity for when he was there over the last year plus. Look, if I'm Josh McDaniels, I'm kicking back on a beach somewhere on the South Shore, enjoying the rest of Mark Davis's money for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So if he wants to come back and coach, you always hear guys who are coaches who, it's in their blood, it's in their DNA, they got to coach, they want to come back. If I'm Josh, I think long and hard about it, because you know what you're walking back into if you're walking back into Gillette Stadium. But do you want to do that? Do you want a different challenge? Do you want something unique? I would still look. Ultimately, I guess to answer your question, if I'm Josh, I don't know if I would take that job.
Now, what I'm about to say is thinking way outside the box here. However, and I also have Vikings neighbors to my left. I have Minnesota Viking neighbors across the street, all great people, and diagonally across the street, all wonderful people, good friends. There is speculation out there, and I'm sure it's not going to happen, but I'm going to ask you, if Robert Kraft, if you couldn't get Vrabel, see, God forbid he goes and signs with the Jets and just, would Robert Kraft entertain trading for Kevin O'Connell, not only him, but still Brian Flores and O'Connell away from the Minnesota Vikings? I'm thinking totally outside the box. But if you can't get Vrabel, I would roll the red carpet out for those two guys and try to get them back with the Patriots. Brian could be the defensive coordinator. O'Connell would be, an offensive-minded coach who I would love. Is that possible at all, do you think? And I'm trying to think outside the box and not the obvious stuff here.
Well, you said before, you never say never, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if stranger things have happened. I don't want to rule anything out, but look, Kraft traded for Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you give up a second-round pick to the Minnesota Vikings, number 30, whatever it is, 30,
Second,
35, 36?
Absolutely.
For Kevin O'Connell?
Absolutely. No question about it. What he's done this year, and I know Sam Darnold didn't play particularly well the other night against Detroit, but my God, that's the kind of offensive head coaching. That's the kind of guy I want. Innovative, and there's just something about him that I love. And man, would I love to see him be coaching Drake May. I think I would be fan. Even if he can't get flurries, if I'm Robert Kraft, I have to, and I'm hoping that it may be, it's plan A, B, C, D, and maybe it's down to plan G, but I would hope that is certainly on his list of saying, maybe we could steal this guy. We stole Bill away. Maybe we could steal this guy away.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Vikings have said that they're not interested, but there's no harm in making the call.
No.
There's no harm in making that call. I think you'd be put it this way. I think you would be doing yourself a disservice if you did not make that phone call.
So you're saying there's a chance? Well, okay. Now, what is when do you think a decision is going to be made here as far as the Patriots? And I know I forget the timeline here when you can and can't sign coaches, and then what's going on in Dallas is crazy and stuff. But what's the timeline here for the Patriots? How soon, if all things go perfect, say with just Mike Vrabel, how soon can they get that done?
Within a week.
Yeah,
literally within a week. They want to wrap this thing up I was talking to someone in the organization. They want to wrap this thing up as fast as possible. They don't want to leave any strings. They want to get this thing done. Vrabel is their guy, and they want to get things started. They also want to get things started because if they can't reach a deal for whatever reason with Mike Vrabel, they're going to go on to plan B, as you mentioned, or plan B or C. But look, Vrabel's their guy. They want to get this thing done as fast as possible.
What do you think plan B is?
That's a great question. At this point, I'm not entirely sure. You talk about the Minnesota Vikings. I would give Brian Flores a call. I would certainly give Brian Flores a call. Absolutely. He does have that head coaching background, back down there in South Florida. So
he should have never been fired. They fired him for Charlie Brown. I mean, that was because he didn't talk to Tua, didn't talk to him friendly. He said Tua got a little sick. How about? Can you imagine if Randy Moss had taken himself out of a game under Bill Belichick and, looked at the scoreboard. Oh, we're not going to make the play. Denver's getting, shellacked in Kansas City. And then the comments, not him either. You got to be stupid to not go up to the guy and go, what are you doing? Get in it. I'm not saying you get a slugfest with him, not that but you at least go up to him and have a conversation. How can Charlie Brown let that guy walk all over him like he did? I mean, isn't that crazy? Can you imagine if Randy Moss took himself out of a game against Belichick? And no accountability. No. And then you get the head coach going, well, he might have been hurt. I don't really know the situation. I was told that he wouldn't play anymore. Why didn't you go up to the guy and chew his ass out? I mean, that's crazy.
Doesn't work for Tua. Doesn't work for him. And you just, that's where you just didn't, in this, that's where we sound like grumpy old men, honestly. Yeah. Back in our day, never would have happened. But, that's where we are with the National Football League.
Well, I don't think it would have happened with a lot of coaches, but Charlie Brown over there in Miami, I mean, it happened. I mean, he lets those guys walk all over him. I mean, I think he's the biggest fraud in the world. I don't think the Dolphins will ever do anything. This is about the best that they're going to be. And it looks like Tyreek Hill is going to lead. And it's not because they're a rival to the Patriots or anything like that. There's something about him that absolutely, I break out in a rash when I hear him speak. I really do. I just, if you're a Dolphin fan, would you have any faith in Charlie Brown getting you deep in the playoffs? Because I sure as hell don't.
No. I do agree. I will say this, Pete. We don't agree on everything, but I will say this: that the Dolphins, man, they're front runners. They can't beat a team over 500. They can't. They just, and look, and it's great if you're, you are what you are. But the best example, the way to contrast them, the Bills rolled the dice, traded away Stephon Diggs because they were bumping their head against the ceiling, going up against the Chiefs year after year after year. You got to take a chance. You got to do something bold. I don't know if that's a Tyreek Hill trade. You have to shake things up a little bit. They've reached a stage where they're competitive, but they're like the Bills, where they were again. There's a ceiling for that team, and there's a ceiling for that roster, and it feels like the Dolphins have hit it.
Yep. And finally, I don't. The salary cap, I mean, the Patriots are set up to turn this thing around, I think, sooner rather than later, provided they don't necessarily have to get the best players, get the right ones, as I always coach the late, great Herb Brooks about that. The people out there, the Felgers of the world, some of them, the cap is crap and all that stuff, and the Patriots don't spend. We got to spend it on the right people. You got to spend it on the right people. Go look at the Jets and see what they have. They are screwed. I mean, what capital do they have? They let Aaron Rodgers walk all over them, pluck players, and that team stinks. I mean, you don't want to do that. You don't want to just, take this player or that player just because you want to spend money to the cap to appease some of the masses, right? This is why the GM is so important. And to agree ownership, obviously, but I mean, you got to get the right players here. Not necessarily the best ones, but the right ones, which is why they should have never passed up on McConkey. And he should have been on this team without a doubt. If you talk about a perfect Patriot player, wow. I mean, you go back and it makes you want to vomit on the spot when you see that they could have had that guy.
Throw up in your mouth a little bit.
Yeah, more than that.
Yeah, no, that's just one example. And they know, they're fully cognizant of the fact that they whiffed on Polk there in that second round. And maybe they should have taken a tackle as opposed to going for Jalen. But hey, that's life in the big city. That's life in the National Football League. You got to take your lumps. You're gonna get some hits. You're gonna get some misses. And they missed big time there on that second round pick last year.
All right, fine. So what's next up? When the next press conference is coming up, what's your schedule like? Are you just gonna wait to see what happens?
It's a waiting game at this point. There's a lot of texting and there's a lot of phone calls and there's a lot of back and forth.
You go down to the stadium every day just in case. I mean, just hang out. You have to do that.
Until we see the white smoke, the puff of white smoke come out of the chimney.
So Vrabel's going to be the new pope. Vrabel's going to be the new
just
pope.
Sitting and waiting. Puff of white smoke come out of the lighthouse, the top of the lighthouse.
By the way, I just saw that new movie about the Pope. What do you call it? Conclave. Very, very good. Very interesting.
I've heard it's excellent.
Very, very, very good. At the end,
we're going to go through the same thing here with a Patriots coach. It's going to be the same sort of drama, the same sort of behind the scenes.
Oh well, the last scene when you find out about what really happened with the up and coming Pope, it might be a little.
Don't tell me.
I won't tell you. Might be a little bit different than what you're used to, but anyway, Chris, thanks so much. Always appreciate it, and I hope you don't have to wait too long down there with some of the other colleagues that we know. And get this done sooner rather than later. If he ends up with the Jets, I can't take it.
But you know what, man? That's good. Jets week will have a new level of juice again up here in New England. It's dropped off a little bit. If Mike Vrabel goes to the Jets, Jets week will be fun.
Chris, thanks so much. All the best. We'll talk soon. Thank you, sir.
Take care, Pete.
Christopher Price from the Boston Globe covers the New England Patriots joining us. All right, Angel, we're going to take a quick break here, and then Miss Mia O'Brien is going to join us up in Jacksonville at 1010 XL. We will get her thoughts not only on the Jaguars and her great question to Shad Khan a couple of days ago, but also her thoughts on where the organization is at, and also going to touch on some college basketball with her as well, about what the Gators did last night to Tennessee and about how some of the kids got screwed out of watching that game, which we'll get back into in a little bit. Anyway, it's all part of the Pete Sheppard Show. Then at 9:30, Bill Sparrows from the Boston Herald and Bookies.com will join us as well. All part of the Pete Sheppard Show coming up in hour number 3 here on the Coastal Sports Network.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber, and I would like you to know that our company has been selling Anderson windows for over 60 years. See the complete line of Anderson windows at any of our 3 locations in North Reading, Beverly, or in Plastown, New Hampshire, or at MoynihanLumber.com.
Hey, everybody, it's Pete Sheppard from the Coastal Sports Network. Want to tell you about my good friend Lou DiMuzio and his company. Lou is the president and founder of Ace Technology Advisors. They're big-time tech specialists. At ATA, they're able to craft, implement, and manage the best and most appropriate solution for your business. They leverage their industry-leading experience and their portfolio of technology partners to improve your best practices and infrastructure. So you can get a hold of them at 888-599-4223. That's 888-599-4223. Check them out on their webpage, www.acetechadvisors.com. That's www.acetechadvisors.com. Or you can email them sales@acetechadvisors.com. Check out my friend Lou DiMuzio and Ace Technology Advisors.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I gotta tell you, I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Me too, but I'm glad we are.
Love Has No Labels and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and life experiences come together through conversation, and it feels good.
Wow, your story is so...
Interesting?
Yeah.
When people actually sit down, talk, and listen to one another, they can break down boundaries and connect as human beings. At lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep, you can listen to amazing, life-changing conversations and find simple tools to start a conversation of your own.
I know one thing. This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope, too.
Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together by having the courage to start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding. Whoa! Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back.
Woohoo! Gnarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie.
So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Don't spaz out because your team lost. Let Pete do it for you. Now, back to the Pete Sheppard Show.
I'd actually like to go back to John's first question, Shad, back to you. I know you noted that if this head coaching candidate was to say, hey, I think the medical needs to be reevaluated, the health and wellness, if they were to say, I would like to reevaluate the front office and the general manager, what would your response be?
My response would be, how would you improve it? And then if it is credible, you want to do it, okay?
Mia O'Brien from 1010XL going to join us in a couple of minutes. That was her yesterday, the day before, going after Shad Khan with Trent Balkin, the GM, still there. And we'll get her thoughts. That question and that response went viral. Great job by Mia. She's going to be joining us any second now here on the Coastal Sports Network. Thanks for checking us out. The Pete Sheppard Show. All of you on the video platform, which is outstanding. Don't forget the sports radio app, SR1029thegame.com. It's best if you're in your car. That's what. Easy, Luna. That's Scotty Terrier. But much better in the car, or if you can't watch the video, which we recommend, but if you're in the car, SR1029thegame.com. That's what you want to do. But otherwise, follow me on Twitter, on X, at PShep326, on a variety of Facebook platforms, including my own, the Coastal Sports Network Facebook page, also at Tampa Joe's, big sports bar up in Tampa, CSN Florida, Rumble, Spotify, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, and always call or text the show, 727-858-6650. A plethora of shows, full slate of shows coming up again today. Angel Martinez, correct? Sorry.
Talking to yourself, but yes, Martinez Company coming up here at 10 o'clock this morning, or a little after 10, after the guests are done here on the Pete Sheppard Show. Then the Drive with Q from 4 to 6 p.m. this evening, followed by Beeves World. And before I forget, our guest, before Mia jumps on here, on it. I'm going to get it here in a minute. Our guest tonight will be Gary Myers. Of course, played for the New York Giants, Hall of Fame voter. He'll be on with us at about the 6:30-ish time frame. And then the last show of the evening will be Talking Hoops with Coach Mack, Coach McBride. Or no, that is Coach Mack, Coach Johnson, and, of course, Doc Riley. So, yeah, full slate of shows. And, of course, you can always go back, SR1029thegame.com, and click on the buttons, individual shows, and go back and watch the replays. And speaking of,
there she is, the one and only Mia O'Brien from 1010XL, whose question went viral all over the nation yesterday, or the day before. I'm losing track. It's only 48 degrees here, Mia. I'm in a brain freeze here. I'm sure it's a little chilly up where you are as well. I can't stand it. Actually, I don't mind it because we have so much great weather, at least here in Southwest Florida, all the time. A couple of days in the chilly cold. How are you doing over there? What's the temperature like over there? 30s?
Oh, I mean, it was 33 when I woke up this morning. We just went for a walk. So, I mean, I guess that's one way to jumpstart the day and dive into whatever lies ahead with this Jaguars coaching search. But it's sunny outside. So as long as it's sunny, I'll handle it.
That's right. Your hair looks very nice, by the way.
Thank you.
Before we get into football, I got, sometimes I have, and you do a great job broadcasting. You're on ESPN Plus. You do a lot of games up in that area. When SportsCenter this morning at 6 o'clock leads with the stupid Lakers getting blown out at home instead of leading with the Gators in their great win over Tennessee or any other NFL news, I don't understand in the media and people up in Bristol and some other networks. I mean, like, they think the Lakers move the needle. Who cares about a team who can't even get out of their own way, who gets whipped on the road by a team without their two superstars in Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And a great game last night by the Gators. Unbelievable. Starting with FAU transfer, was down, more than the Boca area yesterday. Elijah Martin, 18 points, all that stuff. I just want your thoughts on the Gators and that. Unbelievable. I'm sure you watched it, the game last. I couldn't believe Tennessee couldn't get out of their own way. I credit the Gators, but my God, lose by 30, Rick Barnes? I expect that in the tournament, not now.
This already was set up to be the ultimate letdown game for Tennessee just because they absolutely clobbered Arkansas on Saturday. The Gators coming off a loss, the Gators having never beaten a number one team in the AP poll on their home floor. Everything was setting up in Florida's direction. I know most of the sports books that I saw had the Gators as a 3.5-point favorite yesterday afternoon. And if you got plus money on that, God bless you, because that was about as easy a money as you could make. And I felt very confident in Todd Golden's squad bouncing back after their 106-100 loss.
Yeah, they should have beat Kentucky.
Yeah, they should have beaten Kentucky. I mean, Walter Clayton Jr. is a 92% free throw shooter. He misses 5 free throws on Saturday at Rupp Arena, which, I mean, the fact that they went into Rupp Arena and they scored 100, everyone wants to talk about the fact that they gave up 106, but they went into Rupp Arena and scored 100 points. and that was an off day and a mediocre and their worst performance of the season. And so if in your worst performance you're scoring 100, I will gladly take you at home, even over the number one team in the country. This will be the ultimate chicken or the egg, though, because I don't see a world in which Chaz Lanier starts 0 for 5. I don't see a world in which Zakai Ziegler is just absolutely limited across the board. And so I think this is more so an anomaly for Tennessee. It was always going to happen. There was going to be a regression to the mean. It just happened for their entire lineup, or at the very least, their starting lineup on Tuesday night at the O-Dome. And so I think it'll be exciting to see that there is going to be a rematch down the line between these two squads, because I do think they'll be at the top of the table when it comes to the SEC throughout the course of the season.
Now, the one other thing before we get into football, there's a lot, because the other side story to that game last night, which I didn't know about it because I watched the whole game last night, but it didn't come up in the broadcast. Did you hear what happened to the kids? A lot of them?
Oh, yeah, of course, with how Scott Strickland. I don't want to put this on Scott Strickland because people were calling into our show yesterday, and they.
And
here's the
again,
thing,
what happened is that somebody in the Gators organization, the kids they sold a holiday package of 3 games, including last night's game, student seats, and the students got escorted out, and it got a little ugly, I guess, which rightly so. But do you know any more? Like, how does that happen?
It happens because school's not back in session in Gainesville yet. And so, quite honestly, I mean, we were talking about it as we were watching it last night, and my boyfriend even said, like, this is capitalism. This is a meritocracy. If there's not going to be that many students on campus, you have the number one team in the country coming to town. You know it's a hot ticket, and you also have a national television broadcast. Do you really want empty seats directly behind the broadcast table? And so, it's a smart play by Scott Strickland and company. And I don't want to put it all on Scott because this was obviously a collective decision by the university, but unfortunately, that's who's going to be targeted solely because he's the athletic director. But it was a smart move, if you ask me, in terms of dollars and cents. Ultimately, it stinks because this ended up being a top 10 showdown. This ended up being a situation where you had students who were camped out since 5 a.m. yesterday, if not Monday night, trying to vie for one of those limited student section tickets. And that's where I think there's a lot of blowback, because the idea of, look, we are progressing to a world where college athletics are essentially professional sports. And this is one of the few areas where you can still cling to the purity that is amateur sports. And you basically said, we can make some extra money, so we're going to say goodbye to the students and say, you don't matter because Joe Schmo, who lives up in Ocala, is going to pay more money than you are. And so therefore we will gladly welcome him in and not you, which it's unfortunate, but also, if this had been a game between two unranked teams, but an SEC game nonetheless, I don't think there is as much of a conversation surrounding it as there was yesterday.
And just real quick, so because I know every college university has, as far as student section goes, I know sometimes it's first come, first serve. You get there. How does it work at Florida with the students? Do they have assigned seats? It sounds like they don't. If there's a certain designated area, it's just whoever gets there first, as long as you have some sort of a ticket, you can sit where you want. So obviously that wasn't the case last night.
Correct. To my knowledge, that's how it was. And so there was only an allotment of, let's say, I don't know, 1,000 seats as opposed to 2,000 seats. I'm just throwing out a number there.
Yeah.
And so essentially, if you weren't one of the first 1,000 in the door, you were turned away or told you could buy a general admission seat elsewhere in the arena, but you couldn't sit where the rowdy reptiles do.
All right, let's get into your overall thoughts. Obviously, the question you asked Shad Khan, which was a great one. He gave I thought a decent answer, but Balky's face is just stone. I'm like, basically come up with a plan, which I'm sure you could have thrown about 4 at him. And but your overall impressions about not just your question, but how Shad Khan and how about that whole thing went down the other day.
Yeah, let me first begin by saying the fact that they made both of them available, I thought was a massive step forward for the public relations and synergy surrounding the franchise and previous coaching searches. It was a tremendous step forward. I did not expect both of them to be made available, especially because I knew that Shad Khan was in Champaign, Illinois. He was not in Jacksonville. And so the fact that we got the link of, hey, you guys are going to get them on Zoom, I was like, okay. Well, I appreciate that. I was even more surprised when, just to clarify for 1010XL purposes, and if we could carry the press conference or not, that we were told, yes, it will be streamed live on the internet for everyone to see. It would not be kept behind closed doors. So kudos to the Jags that they were willing to go out on a limb like that. I'm sure they're regretting that decision this morning. But hey, I appreciate the transparency and the willingness to answer questions, even if, as was very evident to me and several people that I've spoken to around the building since Monday afternoon, and put on full display the disconnect that exists
Yeah.
between the owner and what is actually going on at the Miller Electric Center.
That's what I was going to ask you next. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, you don't get a lot of honest answers from owners sometimes, or GMs for that matter. But was Shad Khan a little too honest in your opinion? Especially with his boy right there. For God's sakes, he basically said, "Yeah, come up with a better plan, and you can go bye-bye."
Naive is how I would describe it, because I think a lot of fans will cling to the answer he gave me regarding the idea of a candidate coming in and saying, I have a better way of doing this, and it does not involve Trent Baalke. Shad Khan listening, responding, and then if it is indeed well-founded, actually implementing that plan. I think that people will cling to that and say, okay, so if all of the 8 initial candidates say we won't work with Trent, Shad's going to see the light. I don't know. Because I am now, look, I was on the record for weeks on end because I was told that not only was this going to be a complete tear down, cleaning of house, not tear down in terms of the roster, but in terms of the power structure within the building. I was told that for weeks. I was also told that there was about a 2+ week stretch in which Shad Khan did not speak to Doug Peterson or Trent Baalke. You don't not speak to your boss for 2+ weeks and then retain them. It is just unfathomable to see what has occurred over the last month in that building. And better yet, this idea of, and I don't know if this is true or not, I'm working to confirm this morning.
Sure.
There's a report out there from Sam Kavaris, longtime columnist, sports anchor here in our area, who's now kind of an emeritus position at a couple different outlets. There's a report out there that there was a team meeting that Shad Khan sought the opinion of the coaching staff and of players. And the feedback was this needs to be a complete clean slate. And then you fast forward a couple days, a couple weeks later, and not only did Shad Khan not clear the table, he literally doesn't know what clearing house or clean slate is, and defended his move by saying, why would I get rid of 85 people who are doing their job? I don't know, maybe because those 85 people are rowing in one direction and you want the organization to go in another. But it was unfathomable to me, the level of disconnect. And I mean, quite frankly, and not to plug my show coming up at 12 o'clock, but
no, plug away. You should.
Yeah, we're going to have Mike Silver coming on at 1 o'clock. And I have been waiting, Pete, for 48 hours.
Yeah.
I cannot wait because, I've had the opportunity to speak with him and a couple other people who were in San Francisco from 2010 to 2017 when Trent Baalke was there and was the general manager and survived 3 head coaches. I had somebody tell me this week, and I'll close to you on this. This is the same guy who convinced Jed York, another longtime NFL owner, that he should fire Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is going to go down as one of the best coaches of our generation across both the collegiate and the professional level. And he convinced him to fire that guy. Doug Peterson never stood a chance. And that is where, of course, as we look to this search now, Albert Breer said it yesterday, and he's right. Like, you can look at it and say it's still a good job, and I'm going to be the one person that's going to survive Trent Baalke. But the track record suggests that if one of the best coaches of our generation and a Super Bowl winning coach in Doug Peterson couldn't do it, you probably can't either.
Well, I think you bring up so many great points, me, O'Brien from 1010XL. Now, I know as far as interview requests, Kellen Moore, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen, in Tampa, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Patrick Graham, Robert Saleh, maybe is not only head coach, but DC. But I want to ask you this, because my buddy Glenn Ordway and I, who I worked with for years, he comes on the show occasionally. And, obviously we're talking about what's going on with not only with the Patriots, but the Jacksonville Jaguars. And do you think, if Doug Peterson was canned 6 or 7 weeks ago and they rolled out the red carpet for Belichick, and knowing that the renovations are happening, then, on the surface, it seems some good things. And he told me he did a lot of poking around and see if you can either confirm or deny or say that it may be a factor. But Shad Khan's son running the analytics stuff, and I know he's involved with wrestling and all that crap that I don't care about, but it seems to me that Glenn and I were talking about it could be a deterrent for other possible head coaches to come on board as long as that guy is involved with analytics. So have you heard that as well?
It's funny you should bring it up. A couple of my colleagues have brought, now mind you, I do want to preface this by saying I have a great working relationship with Tony. Tony is the one who coined the phrase that I am a fringe wrestling fan, a fringe pro wrestling fan, because of one of my best friends in the business and in life, John Alba, who of course covers pro wrestling on a professional level. So I have a great relationship with Tony. So I do want to put that out there. With that said, obviously Tony knows I will cover him as fairly as I cover anyone in that building. I have heard things that I'll get to here in a second, but I have not gone out on the limb that some of my colleagues have. And so I will just tell you that some of my colleagues have been quick to note that because Trent Baalke, much like Dave Caldwell before him, has allowed for Tony Khan to oversee the undrafted free agent process, to be the head of analytics, to not really meddle in those departments because Tony leads them. Tony appreciates that. In turn, Trent Baalke at any moment, and again, I haven't heard this. This is from my colleague Rick Ballou. Tony Khan is praised by Trent Baalke any chance that Trent Baalke gets, which in turn forges even more of an ally and a partnership there. I will tell you that I was told that when the conversations regarding do we get rid of Doug and Trent were surfacing, Tony Khan initially was in the boat of we got to clear the whole thing. But then backtrack to, well, I don't know because the devil I know is it versus the devil I don't know. And I don't know if the next guy would let me be involved. I was told that by one source. And so, again, that's one person's perspective of the situation. I don't know what the reality is, but I do know, like I said, that I have several colleagues who have gone out and publicly stated that they believe it to be true that Trent Baalke is playing Tony Khan like a fiddle, much like, in my estimation, he's playing his father.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Baalke's saying that about Tony Khan. That's just enough. That's just, butt smooching for the owner. What's he going to say? No, I hate the guy. I want him. That's what I'm saying. It's great stuff by you, but I mean, it's fantastic. I just, I didn't know if that was, that's something that, because I hadn't heard that before until Glenn and I discussed it a couple of days ago. And I'm like, well, when Mia comes on, I'm going to ask her, because if anybody knows, it would be her. And but the overall point is, Mia, that's a freaking deterrent. Or maybe some of the guys who haven't been head coaches before, it won't be because they'll just take whatever they can get. But a serious head coach like a Mike Vrabel is not going to come into a situation like that and listen to Tony Khan analytics. It ain't going to happen. So how much of it, even despite everything that's going on and the renovations and all that stuff, what type of candidate do you think is actually going to end up taking the head coaching job with you guys?
Yeah, so here's the funny part. Like, you say a deterrent, and certainly it is. But I would put Tony further down on the list of deterrents because Tony also is the general manager of Fulham. He obviously is running the AEW.
I mean, Baalke's at the top of the list. Don't get me wrong.
Right, correct. And I think that ultimately Tony will play ball. Tony will play ball with anyone. I think he's worried because he does have his little fiefdom and he wants to protect that. But I think any general manager that came in would have no issue saying, go ahead, you do your thing. It's not like you're asking that you need to be the one who's drafting the first round pick. It's very niche what you want to do. So I don't think Tony's as much of a deterrent as the situation with Trent Baalke and the idea of him being a coach killer. To answer your question, right now, I continue to lean, as I have for the last month, that this is going to be a young, offensive-minded play caller who will receive this job. It is the one, I guess, I don't want to say stereotype, but it is the one thing that Shad Khan has not done. He has hired the young hotshot DC in Gus Bradley. He has hired retreads in Mike Mularkey, Doug Peterson, Doug Marrone. He went the college route with Urban Meyer. The one avenue he has not taken is young, offensive-minded whiz kid. And you couple that with a large reason, in my estimation, and from my reporting, as to why Doug Peterson was fired, which on the surface level was for insubordination because he was told to call the plays and he refused and continued to enable Press Taylor, who, for better or worse, is going to be the scapegoat when all is said and done. And there's some people who, even if they're not a huge Press fan, they feel like that's a weird hill to die on and say that that is the reason that this 3-year experiment fell apart. But ultimately, I think that they want someone who will call the plays because they understand that Trevor Lawrence and the $275 million they've invested in him cannot be just thrown out the window. And he needs to be fully developed and fully unleashed. And if you can't do that and you fail that kid, then you have failed the entire franchise history organization. And so I fully anticipate, as I have for weeks, that it will be one of those young offensive-minded play callers I've maintained, and my reporting has reflected, and it's been validated in the last 24 hours that this is a two-horse race between Ben Johnson, who is the apple of so many in Duval County's eyes, and Liam Cohen, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator, who currently is the betting favorite, according to Bet Online, to be the Jaguars' next head coach. Now, where this gets interesting, in my estimation, is I've also reported for weeks that either one of those two candidates or one of those other young offensive minds, whether it be Kellen Moore or Joe Brady, have already been rumored that they would link up with a former head coach and defensive coordinator. I think you probably know where I'm going here. I have said for a week plus now that I would not be surprised if Robert Saleh received an interview. And lo and behold, yesterday, guess who was requested for an interview by the Jacksonville Jaguars? Now, as Mark Ross told us on Helmets and Heels yesterday, we had him on. 85% of these requests across the league are solely for information. That's not to say that the candidate is not actually a candidate, but most of them are not. They are there because there's information gathering, there's piecing things together. And so all of that lines up to say it is still going to be a young offensive-minded hire, in my opinion, coupled with a previous head coach as the defensive coordinator, much like what the Rams did once upon a time with Sean McVay and Wade Phillips. I don't think the Jaguars will go out and hire someone perhaps as seasoned as Wade Phillips. I think it would be someone in the ballpark of a Robert Saleh or a Lou Anarumo. And therefore, if you're that young coach who's a first-time head coach, you say, at the very least, I have backup. I have my guy who I hired to be this veteran head coach, defensive coordinator, to assist me not only in running the organization, but also in countering whatever Trent Baalke throws at me from across the aisle. The one asterisk to all that is I do believe Todd Monken is very much the third choice if the Jaguars were to have their pick of the litter. And he is obviously 56 years old. He has never been a head coach in the NFL, but he was a head coach in the at the collegiate level, longtime offensive coordinator, previously coached here in Jacksonville. And Todd Monken is fascinating, and we've spent a lot of time in the last 24 hours on 1010XL talking about this because Todd Monken, as so many in Jacksonville know from when he was here, and so many have maintained a friendship with him, he has no issue telling you which way it is. And that is where I think Jaguar fans many of them have gone across the aisle from Ben Johnson to Todd Monken because they look at Todd Monken and say, this may finally be the guy to tell Trent Baalke to buzz off while also getting the most out of Trevor Lawrence.
You're leading to my last point here, Mia, and thank you for taking a few minutes. Is that, I mean, there's got to be a symmetry now. I'm going, we on my show, we talk all things NFL a lot. Obviously, I'm still close to the Patriots and then that mess, what's going on over there. And we were just talking about with Chris Price of the Globe, was talking about, the symmetry that has to take place. Say if it's Mike Vrabel with Eric Wolf, who's, not done a great job, obviously. I mean, what the symmetry between Ben Johnson, and the only problem I have with guys who come in, and I go back to Josh McDaniels and others, a lot of times these good offensive coordinators, because they're surrounded by great players, not that Jacksonville doesn't have a few. It's a little bit different situation maybe in Jacksonville because they actually have there's talent there, and if Trevor can stay healthy. But a lot of times they fail. They come from these unbelievable situations, and they fail. Josh McDaniels failed. There's a bunch of others. Eric Bieniemy cannot get a sniff from anybody anymore. You never hear his name. Does that and then the symmetry? Say it's Ben Johnson. Just speculation. What's the symmetry going to be like with Baalke if it's somebody like that, where Baalke thinks he can, a young guy, I'm going to walk all over him?
That is the $1 million question, because ultimately all of these potential hires are dart throws. I think that Ben Johnson, and again, I don't know him personally. I've spent the better part of the last 3 months trying to pry as much as I can from that camp and from people who've worked with him. He's very particular, clearly, with who he accepts interviews from, who he doesn't, and what jobs he actually wants to go through the interview process for. I've heard from people up there in Detroit that there's days that there's weeks they'll go where they won't speak to him for 2 days because he's just in his office drawing up plays. And then once the players come back in on Wednesday, then he will talk to other people. I've also heard from people, And this is just connecting dots. He obviously comes from the Adam Gase tree. Some people have compared him to Adam Gase in terms of personality. Now, at the same time, Jim Harbaugh is a quirky guy. Mike McDaniel's a quirky guy. I would argue both those hires have worked out pretty darn well in the last 4 years. And so that's where I don't want to completely write off Ben Johnson. But I think that, yes, that is why so many Jaguar fans are concerned, because not only could a first-time head coach be intimidated by the coach killer, but also, let's go back to the top and this point from Shad Khan, that if you made a compelling case that I should get rid of Trent, I would get rid of Trent. Is a young first-time head coach really going to throw his weight around in that interview and say as much, especially, and I know he disputed this last week in The Athletic, but especially when there were so many rumors surrounding former Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback and former Buccaneers offense coordinator Byron Leftwich throwing his weight around, introducing Adrian Wilson's name into the conversation, and Shad Khan having reservations and cold feet and ultimately not offering Byron Leftwich the job. Now, I know Byron has disputed that. He has said that he never had an offer on the table. But where else would that new information be introduced from outside of Byron and his camp in a meeting with the Khan family and loose lips from there? Like, I don't know where else that would have come from. And so I don't think he ever was offered the job, but I do think from my viewpoint, during his second round interview, he said, I'll work with Trent. However, I would like to bring in X, Y, and Z. And that's where I think the story, it kind of took on a life of its own. And that's where I think if you're one of these candidates, you have to seriously consider if you are willing to enter that circus.
Mia, thanks so much. What else you get going on in the broadcast? Obviously, 1010XL coming up today. You got a great show lined up between noon and 2 on your show. What else broadcasting-wise? You got any of, I know you do a lot of ESPN Plus up there. What's going on?
Yep. 2 games on the docket this week for UNF women's basketball. Tomorrow night against Florida Gulf Coast. They'll be in town. Very excited for that one, as always. We'll get Stetson on Saturday, too. And so I'll have sidelines for those. Of course, I also am doing a women's basketball podcast through the OG Triangle Media Group, and that drops each and every Wednesday. So this week's episode dropped this morning. So I'll be sure to tweet that out here in a little bit. Go on and check it out.
Great. The Shaq's daughter, by the way, is she on the basketball team? They had a thing on TNT last night where Shaq said I forget what sport she plays. I thought it was basketball, but I wasn't sure. Shaquille
Yeah, I can't keep track of Shaq's kids. I forgot about Sharif, and I kind of lost track after that.
Mia, thanks so much. You are the best, and we'll tune you in today on 1010XL for your show, Helmets and Heels, noon to 2. Thanks, Mia. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
All righty. From Jacksonville, we go to, also we stayed in Florida. And I forget what city you're in again, Bill. You're not too far from me or Angel that way, but probably about an hour and a half, somewhere, an hour somewhere. But Bill Sparrow's joining us for his weekly visit at 9:30 of all things.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, I'm trying to fit everybody in and try to, I gotta do what I gotta do.
Yeah, I'm always like when Buddy Hackett was on the Tonight Show, we'd roll in about 12:50. It was like, yeah, buddy, you can come on, but we got Sinatra, we got Dionne Warwick,
yeah,
and Seinfeld, but you can come on at 12:50.
Well, Bill Sparrow's,
you all the heavy hitters today, Pete.
Well, everybody, you're a heavy hitter. Everybody's a heavy hitter, right?
I'm a heavy hitter after
you are a heavy hitter. Get out. You are a heavy hitter. You even tweeted out about the Red Sox at spring training tickets.
Hey, I'm doing my public service for my good friend Sam Kennedy. I do want people to know that spring training tickets go on sale today. I already have mine. I got a suite that you already know about that. But
yes. We'll get together this year. Last year we missed out, if I forget why, but we'll definitely get together this year and have dinner afterwards or whatever.
But no, I think people ought to know spring training tickets go on sale today. Spring training is great. I love spring training, regardless of how pathetic or mediocre or apathetic the Red Sox are. Spring training is in my opinion the best part of baseball season, unless they make the World Series. I love going down there. I think Red Sox fans love it.
Mm-hmm.
And tickets are plentiful. So buy Red Sox spring training tickets. I will pimp the organization. Don't buy regular season tickets until they get like a real right-handed hitter. But definitely spring training tickets. No, spring training is great. I mean, it's phenomenal.
March 15th, right? First game.
And they do such a great job. I mean, I'll give the Red Sox credit. JetBlue's a great place, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've never heard a bad thing about it. I mean, the
Great
parking
people
is
that work there. A lot of
plentiful. The
locals.
people are
Phenomenal.
great.
Yep.
The concessions are great.
Yep.
You know,
Kid friendly outside. Lots of things.
there isn't really a bad seat in the house.
No.
And you know, if you like the sun, you get the sun. You like the shade, you can sit in the shade.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be a state-run media hack when it comes to spring training, for sure.
How many games will you go to in your suite?
Usually 2.
Yeah.
I think 2 is about all I can take these days. And
You
then
just said how much you love spring training. You're only going to go to 2 games.
Well, isn't that enough?
I think so. Hey, maybe you'll get lucky and get to see John Henry. Will he make an appearance? Will he beam in?
Well, we'll be right next door. I'm going to be knocking on that door. Hopefully, I've shamed him into saying something this weekend. We'll see. I don't think he reads the Herald, but if he does, we'll hopefully get something out of it.
He doesn't read it. He's being told by it. I mean, all these guys and all these teams around the country, they all listen. They say they don't listen or read. They do. We know they all do. But does he care? So far, it doesn't. You know.
I gave Kraft credit today. I mean, obviously, there's a lot they have to do. They obviously need to get the right coach. They need to have adults in the room running the football operation. He has to spend the money. But to his credit, he took accountability for where they're at now, which I think is a huge 180 from a year ago when he was finishing up the John Ford, Lenny Riefenstahl dynasty. And, you know, it was him and Tom Brady just happened to be there. And Bill Belichick was a pain in the ass for 20 years. And, you know, we fast forward a year later and Kraft's up there by himself saying, yeah, this is on me. So, you know, what do they say? Like in, you know, the 12 step, you got to kind of recognize the problem first before you can do anything about it. And I think the Patriots have done that. Now, I've written this. I've said this. I think, you know, Robert ought to step aside and let Jonathan take over. I think, you know, Jonathan, like Michael Corleone or Prince Charles, he's chomping at the bit. And, you know, it was probably hard for Kraft to let Mayo go personally. I don't discount what he says.
No question.
I'll take him at his word. I think he's been relatively honest with the fan base, save for the last year or two. But I don't know if he's and you know, nor should he. Look, he wants to get in the Hall of Fame. He'll get in the Hall of Fame someday. I don't know if he'll be alive to see it, but his children and grandchildren will. I suppose that ought to be some solace to him. But I don't know what he has left to prove as an owner. And I think his son, on the other hand, has a lot to prove, which means someone who's motivated, willing to take risks, you know, not so much concerned about reputation or the past and much more concerned about the team on the field, but also able to actually facilitate what needs to be done. You know, if I don't know if Robert's in a position to do that. Maybe he is because he fired Mayo. I think Jonathan is. And I think, to be fair to him, you know, he's been a loyal son.
Yeah.
He's been a loyal heir. And, you know, maybe you give him a crack at it. See what happens. It's not like they're going to get any worse.
No. Well,
I mean, they literally can't get any worse because they blew a chance for the number 1 pick. Like, the worst thing you can be is the team that gets the number 1 pick, right? So the only way you can be worse than that is to blow a chance at the number 1 pick. So I don't know how they get any lower than this. And I know they're kind of like Wile E. Coyote bouncing down the cliff every year. They hit a new, you know, plateau or new boulder and bang, 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 bang. But I don't know how you get lower than blowing a chance to get the first pick in the draft by winning a game that both teams were trying to lose.
Well, that's the thing. Well, obviously Buffalo was trying to lose. It's too bad that they weren't playing Denver, a team that needed to get into the playoffs. You know, it would have been a lot different because no question. And I'm not taking anything away from Joe Milton and what he did, and he's a very good talent. But Buffalo, the last quarter and a half, they didn't give a shit. They didn't care.
No.
They were, and rightly so. It was being brought out in the broadcast. And what's her name said it on the sideline. He's like, it doesn't look like the Buffalo Bills are trying to win, and they don't want the Patriots to get the number 1 pick in the same division. So, I mean, the writing was on the way. It's just the way the schedule worked out that they couldn't play a team that needed to win or at least play for seeding. They get Buffalo, which already have nothing to play for. And And if I were the Patriots, and I would have done the same. If I was in Buffalo situation, they would have done the same thing. You know.
Yeah.
But hearing these stories, now you're starting to hear, and I don't want to say the smear stuff that's coming out, but now you're starting to hear the stuff about Gerard Mayo. The story about on the plane ride back from Arizona, which was one of the most pathetic losses of the year, and there's been a bunch of them. You know, not watch a film, but going to play cards with the boys in the back, and a staffer or one of the people on the coaching staff anonymously said, "I've never seen anything like that before." You got the handling of Steve Belichick, where he demoted him for Covington, and then he went out to coach at Washington. Now he's going to go coach with his dad. But hearing all these types of stories. That are coming out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. And it all just translated into one thing. There was no accountability on this team, and this guy simply was not ready. Plain and simple, not ready.
No, and you know, the Patriots have only had 2 coaching changes this century. So, you know, we don't get a lot of that drama. We get that with the Red Sox every time, right?
Yeah.
We always find out, you know, after so-and-so's been fired, whether it's the GM or the manager, like all these terrible things were happening, none of which are reported in real time, of course, which as a former sports editor drives me up a wall. But, you know, of course, the smear machine is going to come out and they have to soften the blow a bit for the team by saying, you know, because it's a terrible look for the Patriots, right? They hired this guy for a year and fired him. But then when you have all these other stories coming out saying, well, he was terrible, then it's like, okay, well, maybe they had to fire him, you know. So everybody's always trying to push an agenda. And, you know, the media, Patriots state media is very loyal to the brand. It's like Red Sox state media is very loyal to the brand. So this is kind of a way to probably, you know, they're putting some stuff out to make it a little less ugly on their end that they totally screwed this thing up with Mayo as the head coach. So these things, I mean, we saw it with you know, John Farrell. We saw it with Tito. I mean, this is old hat. This is, you know, they're just running the old playbook here. The problem is the Patriots haven't had a chance to run the playbook, you know, because it's only been, like I said, 2 coaches in 25 years. But we'll get more. And, of course, we'll get Mayo's side eventually, too, don't forget. I mean, there'll be the story about how he met with Elliott Wolf or Kraft and said, you know, are we going to spend money? And they're going to say no. And so that, you know, remember, his side will be coming out eventually.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, he's got to figure it out in his strategy. He's a young guy, too, so, you know, he doesn't want to necessarily dynamite a lot of bridges like Belichick. So, but I'm sure his side will come out eventually. You'll get the story about how Mayo was frustrated because they held back Drake May for 5 weeks and they didn't want to spend on this free agent or this receiver. You know, it'll all circle out. I mean, the team's in terrible shape. The franchise is in ruins. You know, they keep hitting rock bottom, and maybe this is the last rock bottom. Who knows?
Well, I'm in the Mike Vrabel and go after Josh McDaniel camp, and I don't want to hear about the Ben Johnsons of the world. I don't want to hear about any more offensive coordinators. I want a head coach. I want a real head coach. I want Vrabel. There's too many offensive coordinators with great teams around them that come into the league and as head coaches and fail. Too many of them. And maybe that won't be the case for Ben. Maybe he ends up in Jacksonville and it's a different situation for him or whatever. But I want Vrabel. I want it done over the next few days or as quickly as possible. And I'll take Josh McDaniels if they can lure him back to the team. That's what I would like. Who would you like to see as head coach in OC?
Well, a year ago, if we want to go into the archives, a year ago, I wrote a back page column on the Herald saying, you know, Vrabel was the guy. So obviously, I'm going to stand by what I wrote a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sort of like, you know, Churchill in 19.
Vrabel wants to be the guy. He wants to.
You know, me writing the Vrabel column last year is much like Churchill in 1938. Now it's 1939, and I'm like, hey guys, I mean, what do you want? I told you a year ago. So no, I'm a Vrabel guy. Look, he's going to look at this as an opportunity to not only fix this train wreck of a franchise, but to possibly, you know, one up, in a sense, Belichick. I mean, if he finishes 5-12 next year, he's one up Belichick in a sense. So, you know, if you're Mike Vrabel and you're obviously it's like every coach who coached for Saban, it's all the same thing, right? They want to get out, they want to win, they want to beat him, they want to be their own coach. Kirby, Lane Kiffin, everybody else, Sark. So, I think there's that sense where you have a guy like Vrabel who's ready to prove that, given the right circumstances with ownership that's committed, that's actually going to spend money. Of course, that's always the big if. Same with your Red Sox, that he can come in and turn this team around and get them back to competitive status. I mean, what a mark on your resume that would be to say, hey, I was the guy who came in, in the post, kind of like Europe after World War II is kind of where the Patriots are right now, this post-destructive era where all the buildings are in ruin. They're drinking water out of the sewers. They're eating cats and dogs. And to come in and say, I'm the guy who fixed this. I think that's an incredible lure. I think that's a much greater lure than what Tom Brady can offer in Vegas, unless they just write in this massive check.
Which that is not creepy Mark Davis's style at all.
No, it isn't.
Maybe Brady has some kind of Jedi mind trick powers.
Yeah, I think, Vrabel's been open about his affinity toward the Patriots, as we saw last year. And, the chance for him to make a name for himself is in New England. It's not in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So
no question about it.
I think for him, and not only for the Patriots, I think for him, this is the best move because he has the best tools. I know Drake may turn the ball over a million times. I know he's become concussion prone, but he's got it.
He's got it.
He's got it. Anyone who says he doesn't have it
he does have
is trying to be a contrarian schmuck.
Yep, exactly.
So Drake May has it. No, he's not as good as Jaden Daniels, but he's got it. He could be your guy for 15 years if he stops sliding headfirst.
Yeah.
So you have that. You have other decent players. You have cap space. And you have some draft capital. Not the number one pick, but your draft isn't that bad. So there's a lot to work with there. And if Vrabel is good as he thinks he is, he should come in here and get them to, maybe 9-8 next year, maybe even like sniffing a wild card like the Dolphins.
And again, the people who say the cap is crap and the cap is not crap. It means something, but it's about spending. Whatever you're spending, you got to spend it on the right players, not necessarily the best ones, but the right ones. Like I always quote Herb Brooks. That's what you want. Like T. Higgins being here, that would be nice and everything, but luring free agents here, you got to have a guy like Vrabel in place or somebody like that. Otherwise, depending on what happens in free agency, we'll see. What they spend here, but it's got to be on the right players, not this mess that's happened the last couple of years.
No, and I'll say this, and this holds true for everybody. If they're not going to spend the money, then nothing's going to happen. Like nothing will be fixed. If they're going to spend to the floor of the cap, if they're not going to try to overextend and overspend for the right guy, like you said, then nothing's going to happen. They're going to have – they suck. And so they're going to have to kind of push a little harder than teams that don't suck.
Mm-hmm.
And, then there's the whole millionaires tax thing and everything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to be extra like hard or try harder like Avis in 1980. They're going to have to try harder to get good players. They got a quarterback. Excuse me. Maybe they'll have the coach. As far as Ben Johnson goes, I think the problem there is, he's another first-year head coach.
Yeah.
I wrote this a couple of weeks ago. I mean, Mayo was a poison pill because you brought in a guy who had never coached, replacing a guy who's like, arguably the best coach ever. Yeah. You can make that case. So, to bring in like a complete neophyte, and that's not an insult to Mayo, it's just what he is. It's like you have like the kid just out of med school, replacing, Jonas Salk. And it's just not going to work.
Yeah. All great points, phenomenal stuff. And then I love you brought up what you just said about transit. All I could think of was this time it counts, and that was the Red Sox Phillies promo back in the day when they hadn't played in forever. This time it counts. I remember that promo on Fox. And Bill Sparrows from the Boston Herald and bookies.com, senior betting analyst. You had an interesting tweet earlier, or last night, I should say. and I want you to explain it in layman terms. NFL in 4Q24 was bad, nearly historically
Fourth
bad
quarter.
for sports books. US EBITDA, which I want you to clarify what that means.
Earnings before interest and taxes.
Okay,
It's basically what they
below
made.
original guidance before, So what does all that mean?
A bottom line is that FanDuel's projected revenue is $370 million lower this quarter than they had projected at the end of the last quarter.
Is that based on because players are betting better, or because
It's because because it was a chalk blizzard. All the favorites hit. If you go back and look at the teams where the most money was bet, in other words, like most bet handle teams, an extraordinary proportion of those teams covered. And because the public did so well, because so many favorites won and or covered, that the sports book lost a ton of money. Their revenue was 56% lower, or $370 million lower than they had projected it to be. Every quarter, every company projects revenues moving forward. At the end of the third quarter, which was, September, FanDuel said they were going to make, I don't know what the number is. The number was X. We're going to make X in the fourth quarter. Yesterday, they came out and said, we're letting y'all know that the amount of money we made in the fourth quarter was X minus $360 million, because so many favorites covered, so many favorites won. And we all know that some of these football games, you're getting 80% of the handle on parlays.
Yeah.
So what happens is you have a lot of people who that third leg of the parlay is like, it would be the equivalent of the Ravens money line this week.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of it is money. That third leg is usually the money line, not necessarily
on a heavy favorite.
Yes, absolutely.
And all those heavy favorites won. That's the point, straight up.
But sometimes those heavy favorites are 2,000 to 1, sometimes, even on the third leg of a parlay.
But again, if it's buying you another, I don't know what you're betting.
Yeah, no question.
And so normally what happens on these situations is you have enough of these favorites losing on a regular basis, so those parlays lose. But what happened was you had all these favorites covering and all these favorites winning and all these props, so-and-so touchdown, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, that guy scored a touchdown like every week, right? And, it's funny. Even though the most bet prop this year was Travis Kelce touchdowns, which didn't really do well.
Didn't work out.
But all these other props hit. So the point of that warning and the point of that post and the point of this discussion is that the betting public did so well in the last 4 weeks of last 3 months, I should say, 12 weeks of the year, 12 weeks of the NFL season before New Year's. The public did so well that FanDuel had to adjust its earnings down 56%, or $360 million.
And again, it's hi Luna, Scotty Terry. You look at, just as an example, when Mike Evans came back, and I told everybody, keep Baker and Evans every single week. Bet any prop you can on those two, him passing for multiple touchdowns, anytime, all that stuff. So do you think, before I let you go, do you think the last, prop bets, are they actually starting to overtake, at least in football anyway, starting to overtake, just not only just parlays, but just Patriots -6. No, I'd rather do Stevenson's going to score anytime touchdown or something of that ilk. Are the prop bets becoming as popular as just the straight up bets?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And part of that is too because of daily fantasy. And companies like Prize Picks and others, which are really sports betting sites, even though they don't like it when I say that.
Yeah.
That's as easy a bet. And actually, in a lot of ways, it's an easier bet for someone because it's an athlete that you presume to know a lot about. It's an athlete that, it's a lot easier to focus on one player than 53, right?
Yeah.
You bet the Patriots, you got to take 14 or 15 different things into account. You're betting Mike Evans or Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
You're just looking at Baker Mayfield and the defense. It's a very simple bet.
Yep.
Player props are very easy bets for people to make because they feel very comfortable making them. Because you can say, to your point, Baker Mayfield, guy was phenomenal this year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and of course, everybody always bets the over. Everybody always bets, plus more than. And a lot of those hit, right? Saquon Barkley ran for 2,000 yards this year.
Yep.
And he plays for a team in Philadelphia, in the state Pennsylvania, that's always like second or third in betting handle every month.
Mhm.
So you had a guy, and you had two teams in Pennsylvania that made the playoffs.
Yep.
You had the Buffalo in New York,
Mhm.
massive betting state. They
Mhm.
made the playoffs. You had Cincinnati rolled. They covered 5 straight weeks. Ohio, massive betting state. They made the playoffs.
Mhm.
The Patriots, even the Patriots, was 7-9-1 against
Yeah.
the spread this year.
Yep.
So even the Patriots were +3
Mhm.
on covering.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of teams in big areas with a lot of betting that did well. And you're going to get similar guidance from DraftKings, right? Because the numbers are the same, the spreads are the same. FanDuel and DraftKings have a similar hold on the market nationwide. You're going to get a similar warning from DraftKings eventually, where they're going to basically say the same thing because they're in the same boat. And the interesting thing with sports betting to think about is that the sports books, FanDuel and DraftKings are, they're just on their own. Like the way they're structured and the way they're structured in the US, like Flutter, the stock in the US is nothing, is FanDuel. That's it. FanDuel, that's it. DraftKings is the same way as a stock, which is why they're starting to diversify. They just bought lottery.com or whatever it's called. And they're trying to buy some other companies because if you're just relying on sports betting, you have unpredictability like we've seen with this last quarter.
Sure.
But if you're MGM or Caesars, you're backed up by a casino. Those casino odds and payout, they never change. So when the sports betting numbers go down at BetMGM, it's not going to hurt them as much because the return on roulette's always the same. The return on slots is always the same. The odds never change in any of these table games.
Yeah.
Or any of the slots, the way they're programmed.
Right. $1 million bet is the same on a roulette table as a $1 bet.
But that's
So
not the
35 to
same.
1. Yeah.
That's not the same when you're looking at a football team because you have upsets. You never have upsets in roulette. It's the same. It's the same always, forever. That's why you can't lose money. Sports books can lose money, casinos can't.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the lesson here.
I love it, Bill. Great stuff as always. Check Bill Sparrows out on the Boston Herald. Great columns there, and also great stuff on bookies.com. Great site, by the way. And we will absolutely talk to you soon. And maybe the next time we talk, maybe the Patriots will have a new head coach.
Yeah, boy, it sure looks that way, doesn't it? It sure looks that way. Based on everything we were told, that the fact that they satisfied the Rooney Rule before they spoke with Vrabel, I'll be hard pressed to see Kraft letting him get out of the building tomorrow without a deal.
I hope you are correct, and then it's going to come down to the symmetry with Eric Wolf. Is he going to stay on board, or
I think Eric Wolf will stay on board because Vrabel needs someone to make the donkeys run. He's like, hey, Elliot. I need a half cab Mucciato. Robin needs a large dice. Jonathan needs a medium decaf, and Robin needs like 8 shots of caffeine because his wife's.
Man. All right, Bill. We'll talk to you next week. All the best. And I didn't say Happy New Year to you. I don't know when it's.
I think we did that last week.
Oh, we did it last week. That's right. We did it last week. I'm not sure when it's appropriate to not say Happy New Year anymore.
I don't care. I don't buy that.
Yeah. I agree with you. All right, Bill, all the best. We'll look forward to reading your stuff. And we'll talk next week. Thank you very much. Oh, always great stuff. Well, we had an unbelievable show today. Going to get out of here right now because Angel Martinez has got his show, Martinez and Company, coming up, and he needs at least 3 to 13 minutes to decompress. And lineup is he's got great shows across the network. Thanks to all my guests today, Bill Sparrows, Mia O'Brien, Chris Price. Great stuff today. And Angel, your show is coming up. Massive show, lots to talk about. And is the Jalen Hurts panic real? If he's on the field today, then that's fine. But man, if he's not, pins and needles and pins. But you have total faith.
Yep.
Wink, wink. All right, Angel. Martinez and Company is coming up next, followed by all the other shows on the network today on the Coastal Sports Network. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out and continued support. We had an unbelievable month, where I'm sure Angel will tell you about when he comes up on his show in just a couple of minutes here. I am Pete. I'm back tomorrow at 7 a.m. The Sports Business School, Rick Horrell will join me at 8:30, and a couple of other guests as well, which I'll let you know about around 5:30 tomorrow morning. Sorry, you have to wait till then. All right, back at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. See ya.